Chapter 3177. The divine God's order in Butler Siluo's hand was the most important thing left behind by the God of Heaven. Now that the divine God's order was out, it would decide the ownership of the divine army. When the elder of the Chioji family appeared, Kai Meng stood respectfully at the side. When he heard Butler Siluo's words, his expression changed, but he did not dare to say anything. In the divine world, the sons of heaven had the bloodline of the divine God. Their combat power was much stronger than those of the same level. Some could even fight above their level. However, Kai Meng had just become a divine king. He was only a level 2 divine king. Even if he could fight above his level, he could only fight against a level 3 divine king. Now that the divine world was in chaos, even level 9 divine kings were in danger. A mere level 2 divine king was not enough. If it was a peaceful era, they could be nurtured patiently. However, now that the divine world was in chaos, all the families were in a precarious situation. There was no time to nurture a son of heaven. The remaining value of the sons of heaven gods would be completely squeezed dry. If Xian Lin became the marriage partner, Kai Ming would become a chess piece. Therefore, Kai Ming's position in the family was not high at all. When the elder appeared, he lost his right to speak. Xian Lin stepped forward and took the divine God's order with both hands. Her expression was solemn, and her emotions were still complicated. Everything seemed like a dream. Just yesterday, she was still worried about the marriage. Today, she came to the divine manor and found out that her father had left the divine army to her. The old man stared at the divine order in Xian Lin's hand. His eyes flickered, sometimes showing madness, sometimes showing struggle. "You should leave now," Zichen said indifferently. "If I go back on my words, you won't be able to leave even if you want to." The elder turned his head and stared at Zichen. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. Zichen said, "When your fist is big enough, you can come and find me again. However, when that time comes, I will not hold back. There is no friendship between us. Even if there is, it will be gone after today. I won't see you off." His expression turned cold, and his tone was cold. Kai Meng's heart trembled. He did not dare to look into Zichen's eyes. "Go!" The elder could only leave. Just as Zichen had said, the celestial realm was in chaos right now. Whoever's fist was harder would be the one in charge. Before they had the strength to fight against Zichen, they could only leave. Otherwise, they would only be killed in vain. Of course, he did not expect Zichen to be so unyielding. He did not even put the Chuji family in his eyes. There was not even a possibility of negotiation. One must know that Chioji was definitely not a small family. Isn't Goddess Xian Lin marrying Thorpe today? Why would he appear here? Why would Thorpe let her go? Walking out of the hall, the old man had this thought in his mind. He decided to inquire about this matter. When the two of them left, they also took the people they brought with them. After Xian Lin received the token, she already knew the function of this token. This was a token that could only be activated by someone with the bloodline of a heavenly god. Only the son of a heavenly god could successfully activate it. She poured her energy into it, and the divine god's token began to glow. At the same time, a bloodline appeared in Xian Lin's hand, and the bloodline poured into the divine god's token. 1. A ripple appeared on the token. The ripple caused the space to distort, forming a huge passageway. The passageway led to the place where the heavenly god army was. When the passageway appeared, Xian Lin looked to the side. Yiqian nodded at her. Xian Lin walked in, followed by Yiqian, Zichen, and the others. Finally, the housekeeper and Commander Yabu also entered together. After entering the passageway, they arrived in the sky above a world. This world had undulating mountain ranges, and the area was huge. Sometimes, a tyrannical aura would appear. As the group arrived, the tyrannical aura disappeared in an instant. Then, many eyes fell on these people in the sky. Zichen's spiritual thoughts had already spread out. Within the range of his perception, there were many experts in different places. Some were in groups of 3 or 5, and some were alone. They were all existences at the level of Divine King. Their bodies surged with a strong murderous aura. Obviously, they were not ordinary Divine Kings. On a mountain peak, a person sat cross-legged. He looked at the group in the sky with a strange expression. "You're here so soon?" The next moment, his aura changed instantly. It was as if there was a straight beam of light shooting into the sky. He shouted, "Divine God Army, assemble!" His voice spread out in all directions, echoing throughout the world. Powerful auras suddenly appeared. The God Kings who stayed in different parts of this world were gathering at the fastest speed possible. Gutang! And Ke! Nag! Yabu, who was at the back, saw a familiar figure. His expression immediately changed, and he cried out involuntarily. Some of them were people he had brought with him. But hadn't they all died in battle during the trial? Why were they here? In the blink of an eye, the army of Divine Kings had gathered. There were more than 100,000 of them. Their tyrannical aura was almost suffocating. Yabu looked at the army of Divine Kings. He was completely stunned, not knowing what to say. "Silyo, long time no see." The leader raised his head and looked at the housekeeper. "Bahi, so it's you!" The housekeeper said, his eyes filled with surprise. "Bahi, could he be the first commander of Heavenly God's City?" Yabu's expression changed again. Heavenly God's City had existed for a very long time, but Yabu wasn't the first commander. There were several commanders before him. Some of them had died in battle, some had died during trials, and some had gone missing. The first commander, Bahi, was even more famous. Before Tajan became a heavenly god, he had already followed Tajan around the world. After Tajan became a heavenly god, he guarded Heavenly God's City and continued to lead troops into battle. After all, at that time, Heavenly God's City was desolate and filled with creatures from another dimension. They needed to fight and expand. "Yes, it's me." Bahi's gaze swept over Ichien and Xian Lin. "This is the successor chosen by the Heavenly God?" "Yes, Goddess Xian Lin." The housekeeper looked at Goddess Xian Lin. The goddess walked forward. Bahi's gaze fell on Xian Lin. He frowned slightly. "She's too weak. Silyo, do you think someone like her can control the Heavenly God Army?" The housekeeper said. "With you, Bahi, there's no need to control them." Bahi shook his head. "We were all specially chosen by the Heavenly God. Every one of us has walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. It's inevitable that these people will be unruly. If we don't meet a wise leader, even I can't do anything about it." The housekeeper was stunned. "So you're saying that you're going to break your promise to the Heavenly God?" "Of course not. It's just that Goddess Xian Lin's cultivation is too low." Bahi shook his head and sighed. The leader of a pack of tigers and wolves could only be an even more powerful existence. It definitely couldn't be a sheep. In the eyes of the Heavenly Divine Army, Xian Lin was not even a sheep in front of them. So what if her cultivation is low? Just because her cultivation is low now doesn't mean she'll be low in the future. Bach, could it be that you were born at level 9? Chapter 3178. This woman's baleful aura is not any weaker than that of the Heavenly God Army. She is not alone. After she appeared, another team appeared. Seeing this team, Zichen's face showed a trace of astonishment. These people are all women, and there are more than 100 of them. Midi. Seeing this woman, housekeeper's face showed a trace of surprise. Then he smiled. Apparently, she is also an acquaintance. The woman named Midi nodded towards housekeeper Silyo, and then her eyes fell on Ichien and Xian Lin. "What are you doing here?" Bahi looked at the woman and slightly frowned. "Since you think that the successor is weak, I naturally have to appear. When the Heavenly God left, what did you promise me?" Midi stared at Bahi and said, "After leaving, I will protect her. You don't need to worry about her." "Midi, this is not what you think, Heavenly God Army." Before Bahi could finish, Midi interrupted him and said, "What's wrong? You don't think you can convince the public? Who is not convinced, come and fight with me." Regardless of whether it was a general or a God King level soldier, all of them looked away. They didn't dare to look at Mitty. They are not unfamiliar with Mitty. She is a formidable existence who comes to fight with Commander Bahi whenever she wants. Moreover, they are very clear that they are part of the Heavenly God Army and Mitty is part of the Heavenly God's Forbidden Guard. These people are all women, but their fighting strength is not weaker than theirs. Bahi said with difficulty, "This is not a matter of fighting or not, this is a matter of principle. Mitty, don't make trouble here, this is a matter of great importance, this is not a trifling matter." "Humph, what is so important?" "I think it is just an excuse. Since she is the descendant of the Heavenly God, her bloodline is naturally powerful. Sooner or later she will grow up," Mitty said. Bahi said with wry smile, "You also know that sooner or later. Do you think there is still much time left?" "What do you mean? It seems like you don't care about what is happening outside. The Heavenly God has left, the divine world will be in chaos and war will break out everywhere. Under such circumstances, how can she have time to grow?" Bahi said. "Once the Heavenly God Army leaves, I am afraid they will join the war. Since you don't want to follow me, why don't you follow my sister?" At this time, Xian Lin's voice sounded. Speaking of which, she was only a rank 3. Her realm was indeed not high. At this level, wanting to control the celestial deity legion was indeed not easy. Hearing Xian Lin's words, Midi and Bak's eyes fell on Ichien. "It's only level 7. Although it's still very weak, it's still passable," Bak said helplessly. "Not rank 7, but rank 7. Zichen, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Only then did everyone's attention fall on him. "What's the difference?" Bak asked. "Of course. Level 7 was only the level of this world, while level 7 was the level of the Divine King Heavenly Domain. There was a huge difference between the two. For example, a rank 7 can defeat a rank 7, Zichen said. When Bak heard this, he couldn't help but sneer. A few strange sneers also came from the group behind him. "So, you're saying that you're a rank 8, and you can defeat any rank 8? Barton looked at Zichen. "No." Zichen shook his head. The disdainful laughter in the surroundings grew louder, and there were many provocative gazes among them. "I can defeat any rank 9, Zichen said with a smile. "Shameless boasting!" Bak's face immediately became gloomy. He could tolerate the weak, but he definitely couldn't tolerate deception. "As Goddess Ichien's guard, why don't the two of us give it a try?" Zichen took a step forward and released his aura. It was very provocative. He had already seen that if he didn't fight now, it would be impossible to make these people listen to him. Since he wanted to fight, he naturally had to choose the strongest battle. One battle could decide the outcome of the battle. "Fight with you?" Bak's expression was still full of disdain. Obviously, he was a rank 9, and he didn't want to fight with a rank 8. "I'll just find someone of the same level to fight with you." Zichen smiled and said, "Why, are you afraid? Kid, your provocation is too lousy. I'll fight with you." A strong man walked out. He was a rank 8. Zichen glanced at the rank 8 strong man and said, "After fighting with you, do I still have to fight with others? My time is limited. I'll fight with your strongest. If I lose, we'll leave immediately, and you'll be free from then on. If not, you'll have to work for us." When these people heard that, they all had strange looks on their faces. Since he dared to speak like that and was the goddess's master, no one would treat Zichen as a mere guard anymore. Mitty looked at the butler and asked, "Who's this guy?" "Goddess Ichien's fiancé, Zichen. Don't underestimate him." The butler smiled and said, "Bak, I suggest you don't fight this battle. Otherwise, you'll be embarrassed. If you lose your reputation, it'll be even harder to lead troops." Mitty's eyes lit up. Bak, on the other hand, flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Silio, are you saying that I can't beat a rank 8? Not rank 8, rank 8. It's not embarrassing to lose to a rank 8. If I were to defeat you as a rank 8, that would be embarrassing." Zichen smiled faintly. "What an arrogant brat. Then let me see what you've got." Bach was clearly enraged. He did not care about the difference in their realms and released his rank 9 aura. Behind him, the divine kings who were previously very disciplined dispersed instantly. They cleared out a space and looked like they were going to watch a good show. The battlefield had been cleared out. Zichen did not hesitate and rushed forward directly. He threw a punch. On his fist, 3 colored energy lights circled. An extremely terrifying aura was released from Zichen's body. When they sensed this aura, the heavenly god army, who were originally full of disdain, all changed their expressions. Bach shouted loudly. He mobilized his energy and threw a punch as well. When the 2 fists met, there was a loud boom in the sky. Then, amidst the cries of surprise, Bach kept retreating. Zichen's figure only swayed a little before he steadied himself. He looked at Bach opposite him and said, "Again!" After saying that, he threw another punch. The power of this punch was even stronger than before. Bach was very surprised by the power contained in Zichen's punch. At this moment, when he felt this stronger punch, battle intent rose in his eyes. However, he stopped underestimating his opponent, and no longer dared to underestimate Zichen. He threw a punch. A beast's shadow appeared on his fist. The beast's shadow was extremely ferocious, causing the power of this punch to be even stronger. "Thunder explosion!" Zichen's indifferent voice rang out. The light of his fist exploded. There seemed to be countless thunder in the sky. The sound of the explosion was deafening. The power of the explosion enveloped the beast's shadow. Accompanied by a shrill scream, the beast's shadow directly exploded. At the same time, Bach's body was sent flying by the punch. Zichen did not hold back in this punch. This was his peak punch. Seeing Bach fly backward, there was an uproar. They did not expect this self-proclaimed rank 8 guard to be so powerful. A strange light flashed in Midi's eyes. Chapter 3179. He flew forward, his expression fluctuating. Zichen had only punched twice, but he could already feel how powerful the opponent was. Most importantly, the opponent was only level 8. Once he reached level 9, how strong would he be? Just those 2 punches were enough to sweep away most of the level 9s. Zichen's words were not exaggerated at all. Although he did not use his full strength, he did not dare to say that those 2 punches were Zichen's strongest move. Bahi's gaze swept across the field and saw that many of the sky deity army's faces were filled with shock. Being able to suppress most of them was already enough. After all, these people still needed him to lead them. "No more fighting. With an expert like you leading us, we are willing to follow Goddess Yiqian," Bahi said. Yiqian stepped forward and looked at everyone. "Then I will have to trouble you generals. But I still have many things to do. Goddess Xian Lin will lead everyone for now." Bahi was startled, and then smiled bitterly. Xian Lin was also startled. Now the sky deity army still fell into her hands. She turned around and saw Ben Senlu, Yen Wei, Sina, and Xavier standing there. They looked at each other, and then nodded. Xian Lin said, "I want to return to the Divine King Heavenly Domain." Yiqian turned around and looked at Xian Lin. She was puzzled. "Why? The Sky Deity Army is yours. No one will dare to bully you from now on. But I am still too weak. In this chaos, relying on external forces is not a long-term plan," Xian Lin said. "I have made up my mind. Thank you for everything you have done for me." Seeing that Xian Lin had made up her mind, Yiqian could only look at Zichen. Zichen nodded. "Since you have made up your mind, you can go there. Compared to the chaos here, that place is more suitable for growth. If you want to leave, you better call Kai Meng." With Zichen's insight, he could see that Kai Meng was just a pawn. His situation in the Qiuji family could be imagined. This time, he did not succeed in obtaining the Sky Deity Army. His situation would be even worse. Xian Lin handed over the Heavenly God decree to Yiqian. Yiqian took the decree, looked at everyone and said, "Since that is the case, all generals will follow me first. When Goddess Xian Lin returns, she will lead everyone." The heavenly deity army naturally had no objections. They reorganized themselves and saluted Goddess Ichien. Their voices were as loud as thunder. In that case, we will follow the goddess. We are divine forbidden guards. We will protect the goddess from any danger. Midi stepped forward and said, "Thank you, General." Ichien nodded. "Yabu, your aura is very weak. Are you injured?" Right at this moment, a voice sounded from the crowd. When Yabu heard the voice and saw who it was, he was shocked. Commander Seko! Commander Seko was the one before Yabu had taken over as commander. After what had happened, Yabu clearly understood that those existences, whether dead or missing, had all come here. The so-called heavenly deity law fragment was naturally a lie. Kai Meng's true goal was the heavenly deity army. "Your aura is very weak. Did you fight someone?" Commander Sek asked. Yabu glanced at Zichen. His expression was self-evident. Seko was shocked. "You didn't use the power of the divine formation?" Yabu laughed bitterly when he heard that. This shocked Seko. At the same time, the expressions of the other commanders in the crowd changed. Didn't that mean that Zichen could break through Yabu's defenses after using the divine formation? "Are you the previous commander of the Heavenly Deity Guard?" Zichen looked at Seko and asked. "Yes," Seko said. "You have a good relationship with Yabu?" Zichen asked again. "I'm the one who brought him out. I wonder what happened outside. Sir actually wants to fight with Yabu?" Seko asked. "Leave this place now and take over the Heavenly Deity Guard." Zichen didn't answer Seko's question. Instead, he looked at Yabu and said, "Yabu, I will spare your life. You are relieved of your position as commander of the Heavenly Deity Guard. You are not allowed to enter the Heavenly Deity Guard in the future." "Thank you, Sir Zichen." Yabu bowed and thanked him. The others clearly didn't know what had happened, but seeing Yabu's respectful expression towards Zichen and his weak aura, they could faintly guess what had happened. "Commander Bahi, I'll have to trouble you to come with us. We still have some matters to attend to in Heavenly God's City. We can't stay here for too long. We'll be leaving soon," Zichen said to Bahi. "All right." Bach nodded. He could already tell that Zichen was the one who had the final say in this group. His words were even more important than the goddess. As for why, he asked Siluo about it later. However, Siluo seemed to think that it was only natural that Zichen gave the orders. Then, Ichien activated the token and another spatial tunnel appeared. Everyone walked out of the tunnel. This time, all of Midi's Heavenly Deity Guard had appeared. As for the Heavenly Deity Guard, only Bach and Seko were present. After returning to the Heavenly God estate, the group walked out and saw the Lightning God Temple floating in the air. Although they didn't recognize the Lightning God Temple, the aura released by the Lightning God Temple gave them quite a bit of pressure. Apart from that, there were the God Kings who controlled the Heavenly Deity Guards. Although Bach and the others didn't know what had happened, they didn't ask. At this moment, Zichen waved his hand. The God Kings all flashed and returned to the Lightning God Temple. In the next moment, the Lightning God Temple disappeared into the void and returned to Zichen's world. When the Lightning God Temple disappeared, the Heavenly Deity Guards felt relieved. Bach nodded at Seko. Seko's figure flashed and appeared in the air. "I am Seko, the previous commander of the Heavenly Deity Guards. All Heavenly Deity Guards, listen to my orders. Return to camp and await orders." "Yes." All of the Heavenly Deity Guards shouted in unison. Many of them had never seen Seko before, but that didn't stop them from hearing his name. The moment they became Heavenly Deity Guards, they first had to understand the history of the Heavenly Deity Guards. Although they were puzzled, the most important thing for these Heavenly Deity Guards was to carry out orders. "Guards in the city, clean up the corpses." Looking at the corpses on the ground, Commander Seko gave another order. In this city, other than the Heavenly Deity Guards, there were other guards. These guards were ordinary existences, and they were also the ones with the most numbers. Immediately, ordinary guards arrived and began to clean up the corpses on the ground. The group returned to the Heavenly God estate. Steward Si Luo took the Heavenly God token and went to find Kai Ming. Yi Qian, on the other hand, discussed the future development of Heavenly God's city with Commander Bach. During this time, she gave the Heavenly God token to Bach. When Heavenly God's city was in danger, Bach could summon the Heavenly God army to fight. Goddess, this is something left behind by the Heavenly God. I will now pass it to you. A ray of divine light appeared in Midi's hand. When the divine light faded, a divine needle surrounded by rainbow light appeared. This is the Heavenly God needle? Chapter 3180. Back in Heavenly God's city, Heaven Breaker's arrow caused the void to tremble. When Zichen held the Heavenly God needle replica, he sensed that there was something strange about it. It wasn't an ordinary replica. It was said that it was related to the real thing, similar to the World Annihilation Divine Bell clone that Yi Qian obtained. The latter was personally given by the Bell. This was left behind by the Heavenly God. This was the real Heavenly God needle, one of the few supreme treasures of the divine world. He didn't expect it to be with the Pagoda Battle Heavenly God. Strange expressions appeared on the faces of Qi Wei and the others. They were extremely shocked. Yi Qian looked at the Heavenly God needle with interest. Then, she took it and handed it to Xian Lin. She said, "Take it. You will have something to protect yourself in the heavenly domain." Midi's expression changed, and so did Bach's. This was the Heavenly God needle, a supreme treasure of the divine world. How could they give it away so easily? Xian Lin shook her head. In the divine monarch realm, as long as we are careful and don't take risks, there won't be any danger. On the contrary, the divine world is in chaos and danger is everywhere. The Heavenly God needle will be more useful here. Though Xian Lin used to be very headstrong, she still had a discerning eye. She saw that the arrow that injured Commander Yabu was actually a Heavenly God needle, but it was only a replica. How could a replica compare to the real thing? Clearly, the real thing would be more useful here. It's fine, we have our ways. Yi Qian didn't care. Xian Lin shook her head again. This thing is useless in the divine monarch realm. If you really want to give me something, why don't you give me the replica? Yi Qian looked at Zichen, clearly at a loss. That's fine. Zichen nodded. If the real thing was left in this world, it would be more useful. He took out the replica and gave it to Xian Lin. At the same time, he extended a finger and gently tapped Xian Lin's forehead. A ray of light entered her sea of consciousness. This was the method to control the Heavenly God needle. Thank you, brother-in-law. Xian Lin mischievously winked at Zichen. Zichen was stunned. He wasn't used to Xian Lin's attitude. Fortunately, he remained calm and immediately smiled. Right, there's also this. Yi Qian took out the World Annihilation God Bell clone that she had personally nurtured and gave it to Xian Lin. The quality of the World Annihilation God Bell is the same as the God Needle. They are both related to the real thing and belong to the incarnation level. This time, Xian Lin obtained the Divine Clock and Divine Needle. Even if they were just imitations, they were enough for her to use at her current level. The disturbance this time was resolved just like that, and it was time for everyone to leave. The housekeeper brought Kai Ming back. Kai Ming looked at Zichen and the others with an unnatural expression. On the way here, the butler told Cayman everything. Did it go well? Zichen asked. After compensating with some resources, I brought him here. The housekeeper said. It's not an exaggeration to say that the world is fickle at this time. Next, the group prepared to return. Originally, Ben Senlu and the others wanted to go back and see if their Heaven God father had left behind a Heaven God army for them. However, after seeing what had happened, they completely gave up on that idea. At the same time, they rejoiced. Fortunately, Zichen went to save Xian Lin. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened when they returned to their families. Kai Ming's current situation might be a true portrayal of their future. Thus, they gave up on the idea of going back and decided to immediately go to the God Monarch celestial domain. When they were strong enough, they would take back what belonged to them. When Zichen fought the Heaven God army's Bahi, they had already discussed this. Next, they bid farewell to Bahi and the housekeeper. The two of them would guard Heaven God's city. Heaven Breaker easily tore open space. Zichen's group, as well as Medi's 100 Heaven God Imperial Guards, all entered the passage. When they came out, they were already in the City of Trees. In the God world, as long as they had accurate coordinates, Heaven Breaker could easily reach it. Medi, who had come to this city for the first time, was surprised when she saw it. She looked left and right. Ichien personally arranged a place for them to stay. Zichen followed Heaven Breaker to the God Monarch's celestial domain to send Xian Lin and the others there. When they returned to the second floor of the God Monarch's celestial domain, Zichen left some God King's soul essences for Xian Lin and the others. At the same time, he told them that it would be best for them to fight here and accumulate contribution points. After all, the time difference between the two sides was about 10 times. 100 years here was 1,000 years in the outside world. After that, Zichen went to the Iron Sword faction and told them to look after these people. After that, he went to the encampment. This was where the people he had brought with him last time stayed. This time, Zichen saw Jolina. She was surprised to see Zichen. "I want to go back." This was the first thing she said when she saw Zichen. "You're only at rank 2. Why are you in such a hurry to go back?" Zichen didn't understand. Jolina said, "I'm not good at cultivation. Management is my specialty. There's no point in staying here. I want to go back to the City of Trees." When it came to cultivation, it didn't matter if one had talent or not. With the accumulation of endless resources, everything would come naturally. Now, Jolina was in a hurry to go back. Clearly, she was worried about the City of Trees. "If you insist, then fine." Zichen nodded. The City of Trees now didn't lack powerful god kings. However, management talents like Jolina were very rare. Zichen didn't stay in this world for long. He left and returned to the City of Trees. More than 10 days had passed. Midi and the others had a preliminary understanding of the City of Trees. The fierce battle outside shocked them. After learning about Zichen's plan, Midi strongly expressed that she wanted to bring the Imperial Guard with her. Zichen hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Once again, Zichen led Tyrant and the others into the City of Trees. This time, there shouldn't be anything that could stop him. Midi followed Zichen and saw many mother nests of different sizes and realms. She had lived for a very long time and participated in countless battles. However, she had never seen so many mother nests. From the low-level god generals' mother nests to the high-level god generals' mother nests, there were countless god emissaries' mother nests. Just the resources from these mother nests were enough to start a family. "Are you trying to break the rules?" A level 9 god king's aura appeared. A foreign race member shouted at Zichen. Zichen's response was a slash. All along, everyone had gotten used to his rough ways. After one slash, the level 9 god king was killed. Zichen led his people deeper into the City of Trees. Behind the level 9 god king, there was a group of god king level mother nests that didn't have time to escape. They were killed by Zhang Haotian. The other god kings were also killed by the Imperial Guard. Another group of mother nests was wiped out. If one looked down from the sky, they would see that Zichen was walking in a straight line. Occasionally, he would change his route to kill mother nests. After he was done, he would return to the same straight line. If this straight line continued, it would lead to the core of the foreign race. There were countless powerful existences living here. They were all level 9 divine kings and there were countless of them. The chaos in the divine world had always been within their expectations. Everything was progressing according to their expectations. Everything was going smoothly. However, Zichen's appearance caused all of this to no longer go smoothly. Chapter 3181. In a retro castle, there was a luxuriously decorated meeting hall. At this moment, there were more than 20 foreign races sitting in the hall. They were all level 9, representing the highest combat power in this world. "Outrageous! A mere god race dares to provoke us! We must kill him!" A radical middle-aged man said. That person is aggressive, he has already killed many of our people, his combat power is very strong. Another person said, frowning. So what? We have countless warriors. If he wants to survive under the encirclement, he must be a heavenly god. The first person said again. As for the heavenly gods of the divine world, everyone should know that they are already dead. Kan Ding, calm down, that person's strength is beyond our imagination, he only brought 100 people, but he killed many of our subordinates without any casualties, we must be careful. Another person said. Yes, that person is too strong, it's better to be careful. That's right, let's discuss again. Another person persuaded. With a bang, the level 9 divine king named Kan Ding slammed the table and stood up, shouting. What's there to discuss? As long as there are more people, there is no battle that we can't win. Since you are not willing to fight, give me the people, I will fight. Kan Ding, giving people is a small matter, we are worried about your safety. Kan Ding interrupted him and said indifferently. Cut the crap, either you give me the people, or you fight. How many people are you planning to bring? Someone asked immediately. 1,000 each. At this moment, there were more than 20 people sitting in the hall. 1,000 each would mean 20,000 people. This was a huge number. Even if there were countless level 9 divine kings in the depths, they could not afford to lose 20,000 people at once. 500, the most we can give is 500, otherwise we would rather not fight. The person who spoke first hesitated and said. Kan Ding glanced at them. A trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. He was too lazy to argue with them and said, All right, 500 each. 500 each, that was an army of more than 10,000 level 9 divine kings. It was still very scary. The meeting ended quickly. Kan Ding was the first to leave. Before he left, he glanced at the few people in the hall, called them cowards, and then spat a mouthful of thick phlegm on the ground. Being looked down upon like this, these people's expressions were extremely ugly, but they also seemed to be somewhat fearful of sweating Ding, not daring to act out. As a result, Han Ding became even more complacent and left while laughing loudly. After he left to gather information, the people who originally had ugly expressions immediately calmed down. Among them, a few had inexplicable smiles on their faces. An army of over 10,000 quickly gathered and set off for the outer perimeter. The one leading the army was Han Ding. Half a month later, this army met up with Zichen's army. Seeing the army of 9th grade divine kings, other than Zichen, everyone was shocked. Monk and the others were only at level 7, so it was not a problem for them to deal with a level 9. However, there were more than 10,000 level 9s in front of them. How could they fight? The same was true for Mitty. Although the people she brought with her were elites, they were too few. She never expected to encounter this type of existence just by entering this place. This was undoubtedly equivalent to a great decisive battle. Compared to the changing expressions of the others, Zichen had a smile on his face. The battle couldn't go on like this forever. Someone had to break the stalemate. Now, that person had come. He looked at Han Ding. Han Ding stared coldly at Zichen and shouted, You are the one who led the army to destroy our clansmen? That's right. Zichen walked forward. I heard that you have a force that is fighting against my clansmen? Han Ding asked again. His voice was still cold. That's right. Zichen stopped after taking a few steps and looked at Han Ding. Very good. My army of 10,000 people will destroy your force in one fell swoop after killing you small fries. Han Ding said coldly. Your clansmen will become my food. Zichen smiled and said, You won't have the chance. After saying that, a brilliance appeared in his hand. The brilliance turned into a longbow, and the heavenly needle turned into an arrow. Zichen drew the bow and shot the arrow. The energy between heaven and earth surged towards Zichen. With Zichen as the center, an energy vortex with a radius of thousands of feet turned into a radius. He was the center of the vortex. Sensing this fluctuation, Han Ding shouted. For the first time, he lost his confidence. He should have gone forward to kill Zichen, but at this moment, he chose to defend. Buzz! His defense was fully activated. At the same time, he was incomparably annoyed. He thought that after blocking this attack, he would definitely teach his opponent a lesson. His defense was pushed to the limit. Only then did he feel that the pressure around him had dissipated. This made him feel at ease. The heavenly needle had finished accumulating power. Zichen released the arrow. The arrow flew out, leaving a black crack in the air that extended directly in front of Han Ding. With a bang, Han Ding's defense shattered. The arrow pierced through his heart. The armor that he was proud of was also pierced in an instant. A bloody hole appeared in his heart. His surging vitality disappeared along with the blood that flowed out. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Zichen in front of him in horror. In his line of sight, Zichen was becoming blurred. In the next moment, he disappeared. His body fell down. The battle hadn't even started and their commander was killed by an arrow. This caused the army of 10,000 ninth-grade divine kings to fall into chaos. Fortunately, they weren't real soldiers. They didn't need a commander. The ferocious nature that came from their bones was stimulated by them. Powerful killing intent surged. These 10,000 ninth-grade divine kings were about to kill Zichen. Buzz! The void trembled. Then, the space began to distort into countless fragments. A huge black hole descended from the sky and enveloped them in an instant. Zichen opened his world. This was his greatest killing weapon. In the blink of an eye, the 10,000 divine kings disappeared. The black hole also returned to normal. Midi and the heavenly god imperial guards that she led were dumbstruck. They were almost petrified. They had gone all the way and the greatest danger had been resolved just like that. What kind of sorcery was that black hole? How could it swallow 10,000 ninth-grade divine kings in one go? When they looked at Zichen again, they didn't see the slightest sign of exhaustion on his face. It was as if they had never seen Zichen expend so much energy in battle. After destroying this army of divine kings, Zichen didn't move forward. He just stood in place. No one knew what Zichen was thinking. A ray of light flew over from the distance. It was an alien. He was also a ninth-grade divine king. At this moment, he still had a frightened expression on his face. He cupped his fist at Zichen and said, "Hender greets my lord." Zichen looked at Hender and said, "Tell me why you're here." Chapter 3182. Zichen remained expressionless at Hen's words. Hen continued, "My men have already evacuated from your territory. I hope you can stop your advance." A cold smile appeared on Zichen's face as he snorted. Hen continued, "As long as you withdraw your troops, we are willing to compensate you." "What kind of compensation?" Zichen asked. "Law crystals condensed by the Queen Mother. Useful. It can increase the speed of a God King's breakthrough. Rank. It can be used by God Kings of the 5th or 6th rank and above. Quantity." Hen clenched his teeth and said, 100,000. Zichen said expressionlessly, 1,000,000. Hen looked embarrassed. Zichen said coldly, "If you refuse, I will take it myself." "Fine." Hen nodded. "Also," Hen, who was about to leave, stopped when he heard Zichen's words. "Have your men withdraw. The divine realm is in a mess because of you." Zichen said, "Stop the invasion and return to your territory." This, Hen looked embarrassed. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "To be honest, there are disputes between the Queen Mothers. There are all kinds of disputes over benefits and—" Zichen interrupted Hen and said, "1 more million crystals! I don't care if you fight to the death, but you are not to have any disputes with me." "Fine." Hen nodded again. He glanced at Zichen and left without waiting for further instructions. Midi and the others were dumbfounded. In just a few words, the battle had stopped. Even the compensation had been discussed. "Let's go." Zichen turned and the group began to return. This time, they had obtained a lot of low-grade resources from the Queen Mother's nest. Now that they had obtained some high-grade resources, it would be very beneficial for the development of Tree City. "Can we trust him?" Midi asked on the way back. "Of course." Zichen smiled and said, If they're not trustworthy, then that's even better. I already know that they have high-level resources. When the time comes, I'll just go to the depths and take a look." Hearing this, Mitty's expression became strange. She could already see the scene of Zichen teleporting to the depths of the forest, and then pointing his longbow at the group of foreign race experts. When that time came, he would be able to get as many resources as he wanted. After reaching an agreement with Zichen, Hender headed back into the depths of the forest. Along the way, several level 9 experts followed him. One of them said, "Sir, since Zichen is so powerful, why don't we choose to side with him?" Hen said, "He's dead for sure." "But," the level 9 expert thought about how to phrase it and said, "But he is only level 8 now, and no one can kill him. Once he reaches level 9, who can defeat him? Even if he's fighting for the last spot, he's still the undisputed number 1, right?" Hender looked at this subordinate and said with a smile, "You can see this point, but do you think we can't see it? This subordinate doesn't dare," the level 9 expert said with fear and trepidation. "Zichen is different from the rest. No matter how great his potential is, there won't be a share for him in the end. This is something that has long been predestined. Once the situation stabilizes, it will be his death. This is an outcome that can't be changed. But it is undeniable that he is very strong. That's why we are willing to pay a huge amount of compensation to stop the war." Outside the City of Trees, the battle was still going on fiercely. This battle had been going on for a long time, and no one knew when it would stop. Perhaps it would never stop until one side was completely exhausted. However, this battle that was going to continue for an unknown amount of time was suddenly followed by a sharp sound. The foreign race army suddenly began to retreat. Like a receding tide, all the foreign races retreated. On the battlefield, everyone was startled. They didn't understand why the foreign races retreated. Those tall ancient tree giants suddenly lost their enemies, so they looked around in confusion. The enemy's retreat appeared very abnormal. When Fina heard the news, she came to the sky above the battlefield. After seeing that the enemy had already retreated far away, she seemed to have thought of something and said, "Retreat, the war is over." The battle had continued until now with countless casualties. At this moment, with Fina announcing the end of the war, everyone felt like a heavy burden was lifted off their shoulders. Those dark heavenly ants once again hid underground. Those ancient tree giants walked towards the dense forest. They were extremely strong and had very terrifying defenses. They were war machines. They came to the dense forest and curled up their bodies together, turning into one ancient tree after another. Outside the battlefield, the corpses that were strewn all over the ground were swept clean in an instant. Apart from the traces left on the battlefield, there was nothing else. Those divine races that participated in the war returned to the city and then started celebrating. When Zichen brought everyone back, the battle was already over. The city was very lively. "Looks like they really kept their word," Monk said regretfully. "There won't be any more battles after this." Those foreign races had retreated. He believed that the other divine races in this area would not dare to make a move against them. "What do you plan to do next?" Ichien looked at Zichen. "Develop slowly and wait for a breakthrough in realm." Zichen was 1 level away from rank 9. Ichien and the others were 2 levels away. What followed was definitely a long period of peace. During this period, they would naturally focus on cultivation and development. The group returned to the city. Jolena asked about the situation of the battle. After learning that there would be no battles for a long time, Jolena said decisively, "We need to build a city." "Build a city? A city of trees?" Zichen asked. "No, a divine city, just like Toby's city in the past, is mainly about trade," Xiaolina said. "Will there be people coming to trade? Is this the age of turmoil?" Zichen asked. "Of course. The more chaotic it is, the more valuable it is for a city of trade to appear. The speed at which it accumulates popularity is even faster than Toby's city." Seeing how confident Jolena was, Zichen did not refuse. He only told Jolena that if she needed any resources, she could just ask for them from the treasury. The current tree city had already taken shape. It had all kinds of resources. However, to get these resources, contribution points were needed. And these points were earned by going out and fighting. Jolene led some powerhouses out and began to look for a place to settle down. A place to settle down first needed a large amount of resources. Fortunately, in the last battle, Zichen had destroyed many cities. These cities were still empty, and no one came from nearby. It was not difficult to find a good place to settle down. After wandering around for a year, Jolene finally found a suitable place to settle down. The city was called Yongding City, which meant eternal peace. After settling down, Jolene first arranged a large-scale auction. This time, she took out many resources, including the godly king's soul essences from the godly king's celestial domain. Chapter 3183. This time, Xiaolina had obtained the most authority, so she mobilized countless resources from Tree City. Just the Mother Nest resources alone had been taken out, and during this period of time, she had allocated over 100,000 resources. Although the realm of gods was in chaos, and the major factions didn't have the time to slowly nurture a son of God, the realm of gods was still the realm of gods to the wandering cultivators and minor factions. It was just a little more dangerous. They still had to survive, break through, and find a way to obtain cultivation resources. This time, Jolene took out the most resources from the City of Gods. These were the lowest level existences in the realm of gods, so they were the most plentiful. Under Jolene's careful arrangements, the news spread quickly and spread even further. The auction was set to take place half a year later. When the gods heard the news, the first thing they remembered was the name Yongding City. In these chaotic times, the appearance of such a city seemed to have a deeper meaning. While the news spread, Yongding City was still under construction. Because they had experience in building cities before, other than the auction house, all kinds of supporting facilities were being built together. For example, restaurants and all kinds of material stores. Jolene was busy with the construction of the city, and in the meantime, she brought a few experts with her. In the current 10th domain, only a few major factions posed a threat to Jolene. However, those major factions should be aware of the situation here and could guess the true meaning of Yongding City. They probably wouldn't come looking for trouble. After all, the outsiders had been attacking the City of Trees for so long and had no choice but to retreat. What could they do? In Sacred King Sanders' residence, he was very surprised to hear that the outsiders were retreating. Why are they retreating just like that? His expression darkened. He never thought that the outsiders would retreat. Zichen is too strong. We had no choice but to retreat. The 9th rank outsider was also present, and his face was full of wry smiles. But what do we do next? Do we just let him continue to exist? Isn't that like a fishbone in our throat? Don't worry, my lord. Even if he continues to exist, even if his battle prowess is unparalleled, he still won't get that opportunity in the end. The 9th rank outsider said with certainty. Oh? Is that true? Sacred King Sanders turned his head and stared at the level 9 alien in surprise. Absolutely. This made Sacred King Sandini relax a lot. He said, in that case, let's proceed according to our plan. There can only be one king in this area. This time our people will definitely act, but my lord. The outsider looked at God King Sanderson. Sandini waved his hand. Don't worry. This is a battle of destiny. Even if there is only one person left, I will do my best. That's for the best. Originally, because of Zichen's Tree City, the other forces had temporarily calmed down the war, but this time, the war broke out again. This time, the scale of the war would be huge. They would definitely unify the former 10th domain. Under such circumstances, the existence of Yongding City was even more precious. Hence, when the auction started half a year ago, many deities had already gathered in the city. They were of different levels, from god envoys to god kings. Among them, there were naturally people from other forces. However, after they arrived, they had to behave themselves. Compared to the rogue cultivators and small forces, they knew very well who the owner of Yongding City was. There were no accidents in this auction. All kinds of resources were sold out. As for what would happen after leaving the city, Jolene couldn't care less. She could only guarantee the safety of the city. After the auction ended, many people took the opportunity to contact Jolene while they went backstage to retrieve their items. They wanted to build some shops in the city. Jolene naturally didn't refuse them. Her original goal was to make the city prosperous. As time passed, these shops would continue to expand. Then, weapon workshops would appear, and all kinds of powerful weapons would be formed here. Outside Yongding City, there were space-time creatures everywhere. They were of different levels, and enemies of any level were available. In the city, there were space-time creatures that specialized in training. As long as you killed them, you would be able to obtain the corresponding materials. The war in the 10th domain continued. All the forces were fighting. Many deities participated in the war, but there were still many deities who didn't want to risk their lives for those people. Hence, when they heard about Yongding City, many people came to settle down here. They killed space-time creatures outside the city, obtained some resources, and then brought them to the city to exchange. At the same time, shops appeared one after another. Those shops were either backed by aristocratic families or forces. They could bring in a group of people. In the 10th year since the city was built, Yongding City's popularity was no less than Tobi City. This was naturally due to the increasingly fierce war in the 10th domain. Jolene kept expanding the city, but still couldn't keep up with the speed of people moving in. It was extremely rare for a city to not have a single battle in 10 years amidst the chaos. Hence, Jolene started to build a second city. In fact, the 10 domains in the realm of the gods were all in the same situation. If a city was built in another domain, it would be just as popular. Countless resources would enter the city every day. Unfortunately, the 10 domains were too far apart. Without a teleportation portal, it was very troublesome to manage. Hence, it was abandoned. However, even in the 10th domain, it was enough to build a few hundred or even a few thousand popular Yongding cities. Hence, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th cities appeared one after another. After 100 years, 10 Yongding cities appeared in the realm of the gods. These 10 Yongding cities were all interconnected with teleportation portals. In order to build these teleportation portals, Jolene spent a lot of resources. However, compared to the daily income of the 10 cities, these resources were nothing. Some of them were even provided by the shops for free. Jolene only needed to reduce some of the taxes. The war continued for 100 years, but it didn't stop. Instead, it became more and more intense. All the forces were fighting with real fire. Various private armies joined the battlefield. At the same time, many foreign races also joined the war. Under such circumstances, the divine race army was constantly faced with an endless stream of foreign races. Even though the leaders repeatedly improved the treatment, many people still chose to leave and join Yongding City. Yongding City was still expanding, but every city could reach the peak of popularity in a very short period of time. The war was still going on. Zichen was still in seclusion. His avatar was still in a deep sleep and had yet to wake up. Chapter 3184. The chaos in the divine world was still going on. Yongding City had expanded by one city every 10 years. At this moment, it had 20 cities. Tyrant, Zhanghaotian, Demon Ape, and the others were arranged to guard those cities. The other cities were guarded by the experts from the God King Heaven territory. The king list of the divine world had gradually lost its credibility because Zichen, who had killed Thorpe, wasn't on the list. Besides them, Tai Jian and the others had the strength to be on the list. Apparently, Tai Jian and the others weren't on the list. As time flew, the number of experts in the City of Trees was increasing. After Su Mengyao reached level 8, she ended her seclusion and stepped on the teleport formation to return to the Life Star. The place she was standing on used to be called the Barbarian Land. Now, it was the Holy Land. Not many people knew the history of this area. Su Mingyao had spent half a year to carefully investigate this holy land. Then, she returned to the divine world and woke up Zichen, who was still in seclusion. You want to develop a force in the life star? Hearing Su Mingyao, Zichen was surprised. The divine world had more resources and a much bigger area. Moreover, it was connected to the passage to the life star. Everyone on the life star could use the passage to come to the divine world. It seemed that there was no need to go back and develop. You know that my cultivation technique is special. This time, I've done a deduction in the divine world. Although I didn't get anything, I have a bad feeling. I feel that something big is going to happen in the divine world. It's necessary to leave a force in the life star, said Su Mingyao. What do you plan to do? Asked Zichen. You go and inform those forces to move out of the Holy Land. I've decided to build the base of my force there. That's the first step. In the future, as the force continues to develop, perhaps we can use the entire continent. This was the main reason why Su Mingyao had woken up Zichen from his seclusion. All right. Zichen nodded without hesitation. With his current strength and position, it wasn't too troublesome to make those people leave the Holy Land. Although this would cause losses to the aristocratic families, it would be fine as long as Zichen gave them a certain amount of compensation. No matter what, this life star was connected to him in many ways. Many aristocratic families had sent their forefather-level experts to Tree City. Zichen decided to return to the life star immediately. Su Mingyao arranged the others to deal with the aftermath. After returning to the life star, Zichen walked directly to the everlasting sect. Although the sect he had built wasn't as lively as it used to be, it was still the most mysterious sect on this life star. At the same time, it was the sect that all young people wanted to join. You are the current sect master? In the room, Qingjing had just finished his training. Just as he opened his eyes, he heard a voice by his ear. Startled, he slowly turned his head and saw a young man sitting not far away. To be able to sneak into the Wuji sect and into his room without triggering the formation, this person was clearly a true expert. Who are you? Qingjing gazed at this young man. He found his face familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him before. All of a sudden, Qingjing's eyes sparkled as he screamed in surprise. Forefather! You are Zichen! He finally remembered, his face so excited. If Zichen hadn't gently waved his hand, sending a beam of energy to Qingjing, he would have knelt down. Greetings, forefather! Qingjing was so excited. He didn't expect to see the forefather's face. No need to be so polite. I'm here this time because I have something to tell you, said Zichen. Forefather, please tell me. You go and inform all the masters of the aristocratic families in the Holy Land. Tell them that I want to discuss the relocation of the forces with them, said Zichen. Relocation of the forces? Qingjing was bewildered. Right. I want to establish a new force in this Holy Land. All the aristocratic families and all the creatures in this area must leave this place. You can discuss what they want and tell me later. Yes, I'll do it right away. This wasn't a small matter, so Qingjing didn't dare to delay. He immediately sent someone to deliver the message. The fact that the forefather Zichen had personally summoned everyone shocked all the families. They didn't dare to delay and rushed over as quickly as possible. Because the laws of this world had increased, the heaven and earth spirit chi had become extremely abundant. There were as many experts as there were clouds, so this holy land gave birth to many aristocratic families. This was the first time that the patriarchs of these aristocratic families had seen the legendary Zichen. Their expressions became extremely excited. In the space hall of the Wuji sect, Zichen looked at everyone and said, I'm sure everyone knows why I've gathered everyone here. This matter is non-negotiable. I will take all of this holy land. Perhaps in the future, we will take over even more places on this continent. Everyone was silent and didn't express any opinions. With Zichen's current strength and forces, they would naturally do whatever he said. If you want any compensation, feel free to ask. As long as it's within our means, we will give it, Zichen said. In addition, we can give you some spots in the first batch of trial areas that we will be building. If you want a spot in the future, you will have to fight for it yourselves. Sir, what kind of trial areas are you talking about? Someone mustered up the courage to ask. Zichen said, For now, it will be the Saint Realm. It won't be lower than the Heaven Realm. As for the higher levels, it will be the Divine Envoys and Divine Generals. For now, there won't be any Divine Kings. For these people, the Saint Realm trial areas were the most useful. The other higher level trial areas weren't something they could come into contact with. I'll give you 3 days to discuss what kind of compensation you want. Then I'll give you half a year to evacuate. As for the other creatures in this area, I will inform them to leave. Evidently, these people could tell from Zichen's words that there wouldn't be a single creature left in this holy land. Half a year to choose a place and leave. Although the time was short, these people had to agree. Zichen continued. As for the small worlds that each of you controls, take those that you can. As for those that you can't, I'll have someone use a powerful technique to move those small worlds outside of the sacred grounds. Then, you can claim them yourselves. Everyone nodded and immediately rushed back to their families. At the same time, Zichen had returned to the God world. Su Mingyao's first batch of people had arrived at the Life Star and started to discuss the compensation. Su Mingyao appeared in the original burial ground, holding a glowing seed in her hand. She put the seed on the ground. The seed took root and sprouted, turning into a giant ancient tree. The ancient tree grew rapidly and became a king tree. Chapter 3185. The original Saint Burial Ground had become a city of trees, causing a great commotion and attracting the attention of many forces. In less than a quarter of an hour, several figures appeared outside Tree City. When they saw what was before them, shock was all that was left on their faces. Above the city of trees, a person stood. Her white robe fluttered in the wind like a fairy. These people from various factions bowed respectfully to the fairy from afar and left quickly. Soon, the news spread in the sacred land. Su Mingyao looked at the king tree and said, From now on, this will be your base. Yes, master! Su Mingyao floated away. Soon, this city of trees would be inhabited. Other than the humans, a portion of the dark heavenly ants and mother nest would also come to this world. This place was also a base for Zichen. If something were to happen to the divine world, Zichen would be able to make a comeback with the help of this sacred land. Even though Su Mingyao couldn't think of anyone in the God realm who could be Zichen's opponent or pose a threat to him, she still had to be careful. Su Mingyao developed her faction in the sacred land while Jolina expanded her city in the divine realm. Every 10 years, she would build a city. Each city was very popular. Other than the people of the 10th domain, there were many divine clans from other domains. They heard the news and came to Yongding City. The names of these cities were the same. The only difference was the number. Next, Zichen went to the Divine King's Sky domain again. He brought all the people back. Qi Wei and the others had accumulated a lot of contribution points over the years, so they chose to come back with Zichen. On the way back, Zichen asked Qi Wei if he could suppress the power in his body. Qi Wei smiled bitterly. The lightning energy in Zichen's body was the natural enemy of the energy that Wei Wei had obtained. However, as Zichen grew stronger, Wei Wei could naturally sense the energy in Zichen's body as well. Thus, Zichen remained dormant. The war in the 10th domain of the divine realm lasted for another 200 years before it finally stopped. The original factions either disappeared or surrendered. As a result, there were only 5 factions left in the 10th domain. Sandra was one of them. Following this, the 5 factions joined forces and attacked the surrounding regions. The battlefield finally moved away from the 10th region. Zichen did not pay much attention to this. Although he did not know why these people were fighting to the death, it had nothing to do with him. His power was stable enough, and no one would come here to find trouble with him. On this day, Jolina, who had not returned for many years, suddenly returned to the city of trees. She brought back a shocking piece of news. Upon hearing this news, even with Zichen's mental fortitude, his expression couldn't help but change. "Are you sure?" Zichen stared at Jolena. Jolena slowly shook her head and said, "I paid a price to obtain this information. I promised that faction a lot of benefits, but I can't guarantee that the information is true. But that person had said that even if the purpose of the war was different, it was close. 10 regions, only 9 strongest people, and these 9 people would be recognized by the heavens and earth. The God's law would descend and they would become the new God." This news was naturally shocking. Apart from the temptation of becoming a celestial god, there was another meaning. It seemed that the 9 celestial gods of the past would not be able to return. In this world, it was already common knowledge that one could not become a god through cultivation. Could it be that one could really become a god through the God's law? But where did the God's law come from? Was it something nurtured by the heavens and earth? Or was it man-made? The possibility of the latter was denied by Zichen. If it was man-made, there would be more than 9 gods in the world. If it was the former, it was very possible. But what did this mean? Could it be that the 9 gods, including the pagoda battle god, had all died? Then the God's law that belonged to them would descend to the world again to choose the new 9 gods. But why did they have to rely on battle to obtain it? All kinds of doubts lingered in Zichen's mind. He didn't even know when Jolena had left. If a new god really appeared, and this god was full of hostility towards him, then the moment that god appeared would be the moment that his faction would be destroyed. In this way, Su Mingyao's perception of inexplicable danger was verified. Zichen, who had no clue, left the room and went to Fina's residence. Fina and Heavenbreaker were existences from a very long time ago. Perhaps she knew how gods were formed. When Zichen arrived, Fina was brewing tea. Her expression was very focused, and the fragrance of tea filled the treehouse. What a rare guest! A smile appeared on Fina's face as she looked at Zichen. "What's the matter? I want to know what level of existence a god is." Zichen sat across from Fina and asked the question in his heart. "The same as the Divine King." Fina handed Zichen a cup of tea and said calmly, "How can one become a god?" Zichen asked again. Fina said, "Under normal circumstances, one can reach it through cultivation. Although it's a bit difficult." Zichen asked, "Then what if it's an abnormal situation?" Fina said, "It's abnormal right now." "Why?" "Because the God's law is sealed by the laws of heaven and earth, so people can't sense the God's law in the slightest, so no one can break through." Zichen keenly grasped something and asked, "Then why is there an existence at the level of God in this world?" "Because it's bestowed by the laws of heaven and earth." Fina thought for a bit and explained. "For example, the room you and I are in right now has the God's law, and the door is a layer of seal. If you want to obtain the God's law, you must find the key, open the door, and then come in to take the law. Are you saying that to become a god, one must take the key to open the seal, and only 9 gods' law can be taken out at a time? That's why there have always been only 9 gods in the god realm? That's the theory, but I don't know the specifics. How do I find the key?" Fina glanced at Zichen and smiled. "How would I know? If I knew, I wouldn't be here drinking tea all day, and Patian wouldn't be sleeping all day either." After leaving Fina's place, Zichen was still full of doubts. The matter of the God's law was extremely important, so he had to get to the bottom of it. After returning to his place, Zichen pondered again and decided to leave the City of Trees to ask someone. God King Sandro and the others had been fighting all this time, so they might know a lot of details. Zichen believed that asking them would be helpful. As for whether or not these people would tell him the truth, Zichen wasn't worried. Chapter 3186. In the room, God King Sandini and the 9th rank outsider were discussing how to go to war. The alliance of the 10th domain's 5 powers was naturally of the utmost importance. Every aspect had to be considered. Suddenly, the guards outside cried out in alarm. It seemed that someone had barged into the God King's residence. God King Sandini frowned, displeasure showing on his face. As one of the few powerhouses in this domain, Who would dare barge into his residence? Before he could ask, he sensed a familiar aura, and his expression changed instantly. Why is he here? Forcibly suppressing his displeasure, God King Sandini hurried outside. As for the ninth-rank outsider, he knew who the intruder was and wanted to slip away. Don't go, I have something to ask you too. Zichen's voice rang out in the meeting room as he suddenly appeared. Your Excellency, just now. A guard came in to report, but before he could finish, God King Sandini interrupted him. I understand. You may leave. Without my permission, you are not to come in. Yes, Your Excellency. The guard outside left. Seeing Zichen appear, a smile immediately appeared on God King Zenith's face. Zichen, what are you doing here? Am I not welcome? Zichen glanced at God King Sandini. Welcome, of course you're welcome. God King Sandini smiled obsequiously, but in truth he felt bitter. What kind of world was this? Back when Zichen had just become a divine champion, he was the God King. Back then, he could crush Zichen with a single finger. Now, he was still the God King, but everything was reversed. If Zichen wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping over his hand. The ninth-rank outsider lowered his head, not daring to look at Zichen. Zichen walked straight to the main seat and sat down. He glanced at Sandro and the level 9 alien and said, I don't care what kind of shady business you guys have. I'm here today because I have something to ask. After that, I'll go ask the others. So, you two better not lie to me. If I find out that I've been deceived, then there's no need for you to continue the war. Just decide on the next city lord. Faced with such a direct threat, the God King did not dare to get angry. He could only say, Ask? We will tell you everything we know. Zichen's expression became very serious as he asked. I heard that the reason you caused the turmoil in the God realm was to fight for a spot as a heavenly god? When Sander heard this, his expression changed. Speak! Isn't that right? Zichen's voice turned cold. Sacred King Sanders glanced at the rank 9 alien, who was still lowering his head. Thinking of Zichen's threat, Sacred King Sanders nodded and said, Yes, but whether or not we can get it is another matter. Oh, tell me the details. Zichen's expression changed. Sure enough, this was the case. It's like this. The 9 great celestial gods of the past are all dead. Right now, the celestial world is without a leader. So, as long as the strongest 9 people appear, they will have a chance to obtain the celestial law and become the new celestial god, said Sander. How do you know that the 9 heavenly gods are dead? Asked Zichen. This? Sacred King Sander's expression was troubled. Speak! Zichen's voice became even harsher. We sensed it, said the alien. The level 9 alien said, We have a very clear perception of the laws of this world. When the celestial god was here, the laws of this world were very stable. After the celestial god left, the laws gradually became unstable. Now they are in turmoil. Why didn't I sense it? Asked Zichen with a frown. Perhaps it's because of a different cultivation method. The alien forced a smile and said, Under these circumstances, the laws of the world will recognize a new heavenly god to stabilize the laws of the god realm. You seem to know more than Sacred King Sanders, said Zichen coldly. The alien said, Because I was the one who told the Sacred King this. Because of our race's status, we can't obtain the recognition of a heavenly god. That's why I came to find the Sacred King and help you fight. I hope that after you become a heavenly god you'll protect our race. Zichen said. So you're saying that the shadows of other races are present in the current turmoil? You're the ones who want to seek protection? The alien nodded and said, Yes. Although in your eyes we are all aliens, we are different. It's just like how there are many families in the god realm. There are also disputes and turmoil between us. Some of us are even life and death enemies. Therefore, in times of turmoil like this, we will choose to join a faction. How did you find out about this? Asked Zichen again. We paid a great price to find out. In order to spread this news, many of our subordinates died. A trace of regret flashed through the alien's eyes. Zichen thought for a moment and said, "In other words, as long as you're the strongest 9, you have a chance of becoming a heavenly god?" "That's just our guess. We can't be sure if that's the case. For example, it might not be the strongest 9 people, but the 9 with the greatest influence. The only thing we can be sure of is that there are only 9 spots for becoming a heavenly god." Zichen nodded slightly and said, "One last question. If you're seeking protection, why haven't any aliens come to find me? Is it because I'm too weak? Or is my faction too weak?" The alien said in panic. "It's not that we don't want to, but you're not a member of the God realm. So, also, when we made up our minds, you weren't in the God realm. You can't become a heavenly god if you're not a member of the God realm?" Zichen frowned. "Actually, we've only heard rumors about this. It's not the complete story. Too much time has passed. The truth has long been buried in the river of history." The alien said carefully, "The news we've received is that you've joined a faction of the God realm, but this faction doesn't include the son of a god." This was obviously wrong, because if the son of a god wasn't included, then why did the aliens help Kai Meng? But then, Zichen realized the reason. The aliens weren't helping Kai Meng, but the Chuji family. Kai Meng was just a pawn of the Chuji family. He had no right to speak. Whether it was Sacred King Sander or the alien, they were all very cooperative. They didn't hide anything, so Zichen didn't have a reason to get angry. After asking a few more questions, he left. After that, he went to ask a few other factions. These factions also had the help of aliens. Although the answers he received were different, they weren't too different. It was just that the channels of information were a little different. But most of it was correct. For example, Zichen wasn't a member of the God realm. Then, some people vaguely said that the son of a god wasn't part of their list of factions. After asking all the major factions in the 10th domain, Zichen returned to the City of Trees. Since he'd learned this, he had to plan. At the very least, he had to ensure the safety of the City of Trees when a heavenly god appeared. Chapter 3187. All the main forces from the Life Star had emerged from seclusion. Zichen told everyone everything. After hearing the news, everyone's faces were filled with shock. It turned out that the war in the God realm was to elect a new heavenly god. "What do you think?" Zichen looked at everyone and asked. "What else can we think?" Tyrant said. "If that's the case, then we should join the war and elect a new heavenly god. After all, we have many gods on our side. Roy, Toby, Martin, and the others can all do it." Zichen shook his head and said, "This method is not feasible. Otherwise, those outsiders would have come to us long ago. Also, I suggested joining them, but they rejected me. Obviously, they don't want us to help, and they don't even want to have anything to do with us." Tyrant said unhappily. "What is this? They're deliberately drawing a line between us. Aren't they afraid that we'll kill everyone? When the time comes, we'll be the only ones left in the God realm. Who else can they give the heavenly god spot to? The most important thing now is to prepare in advance," Su Mingao said. "As for the rest, we'll talk about it later." Zichen nodded and said, "I think so too. The war will continue for many years, and we don't know when the heavenly god's law will appear. We still have enough time to prepare. According to Zichen, the heavenly god's law does not belong to us. Even if we fight for it, it's useless. Once the danger comes, we have to leave this world." Xingqian, who almost never expressed his opinion, suddenly spoke. Everyone's expression changed. Zichen looked at Xingqian and said, "What do you suggest? Don't you have another set of coordinates?" "The secret to becoming a heavenly god is there," Xingqian said. "That set of coordinates belonged to Li Ai, left behind by Zeus sky god." At this moment, Li Ai was also there. She said, "That set of coordinates is still there, but with our current strength, I'm afraid we can't reach it." Xingqian said, "Don't worry. When the chaos in the god realm subsides, we should be at level 9. Once something uncontrollable happens, we'll leave immediately." Even if they left, there would not be many people, so they still had to consider how to settle everyone. The construction of the encampment in the Holy Land obviously had to be sped up. When danger appeared, that would be an excellent place to hide. Apart from that, the people living in the City of Trees would also need to be relocated. If something uncontrollable happens, we can send some people into the World Annihilation Divine Bell, Ichian said. The interior of the World Annihilating Divine Bell was a space of its own, and it was somewhat similar to Zichen's Lightning Divine Palace. Thinking about the Lightning Divine Hall, a ray of light flashed across Zichen's eyes. There's no need to rush this matter for now. We'll talk about it in a few days. During this period of time, everyone should make the best use of their time to cultivate and strive to reach the 9th grade as soon as possible. After the meeting, Su Mingyao returned to the Holy Land. The construction of the new force had to be sped up. Fortunately, the factions in the Holy Land were very cooperative. The Boundless sect was the first to move. The original Boundless sect took everything that they could, and those that they couldn't were turned into nothingness. They were devoured by the ancient trees that had extended to this place, turning it into a city of trees. Next, according to Su Mingyao's prediction, the entire Holy Land would be enveloped by a sea of trees. The ancient trees in the middle could fight, and the cities would be connected to each other. There would be no castles in this area, and it would all be controlled by the King Ancient Tree. Because it covered the entire Holy Land, the King Ancient Tree could easily transmit one order after another. These orders would be passed on to the other kings through the King Ancient Tree. Under the ancient trees, there were dark heavenly ants living. Among them, there were also a few queen ants. They had only reproduced recently. They hid under the ground and relied on the life force absorbed by the roots to grow. Once a great battle broke out, the roots would make way for them, and the dark heavenly ants would attack. At the same time, there were creatures from another dimension living in this ancient forest. They could fight with each other, and only the fittest would survive. At the same time, they could open up the forest for others to train in. As long as they had the ability, they could kill all the creatures from another dimension and exchange them for materials. Many of the City of Trees had various workshops that produced all kinds of materials. One of them was reserved for the craftsmen. They would forge high-quality armors there. After serving Zichen for a period of time, they would be free to choose their next itinerary. They could choose to stay or go to other areas. The war in the Divine Realm had developed into a war between regions. Under the large-scale war, the number of casualties gradually increased. A peaceful city became very precious. The Heavenly God City of the 9th Region was once the core city of the 9th Region. There were a few large-scale battles here, but with the Heavenly God Guards and the Heavenly God Army, no one could break through. Therefore, after a few battles, the battle ended without a conclusion. The battle was still ongoing. Looking at the 10 regions of the Divine Realm, other than Yongding City, there were other cities that were not fighting, but there were very few. Jolena knew about the unforeseen events that might happen in the future, but she still had no intention of stopping the construction of the city. Zichen did not stop her. Even if the enemy really came, and it was an existence that he could not contend with, those people would probably not do anything to those cities. After all, that was a huge amount of wealth, and it was endless. It was better to just take it directly, and there was no need to completely destroy it. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years passed. In Zichen's world, a wisp of black light appeared on the body of the Netherworld clone, who had been sleeping all this time. This black light was pure Netherworld energy, and it curled around his body. At the same time, a powerful aura surged out from the Netherworld clone. This aura belonged to the 9th grade. The Netherworld clone, who had woken up from a deep sleep, directly broke through. It was the first time he had walked ahead of the real body. And his comprehension would soon become the real body's, and it would lead the real body to break through. Zichen sensed the abnormality in the world and appeared in a flash. The Netherworld clone opened his eyes and stood in the world. A powerful aura surged out from his body. "How is it?" Zichen asked. The Netherworld clone nodded and said, "Very good." With a thought, various images appeared behind him. It was as if a powerful technique had appeared. The Netherworld clone said, "I have already obtained the Netherworld inheritance." Obtaining the Netherworld inheritance meant that he had already obtained various Netherworld battle techniques. The Netherworld clone's combat power was naturally very strong. After chatting with the clone for a while and explaining the current situation, Zichen's figure flashed and disappeared. In the Divine Realm, in a desolate area where there were no signs of human habitation and no traces of battle, the space here was very unstable. Occasionally, there would be distortions wreaking havoc. Suddenly, a huge vortex appeared out of thin air, and a person walked out from it. Chapter 3188. Arthur turned around and said to the passage that hadn't closed yet, "Hurry up. This is the Divine World. We're finally back." Behind Arthur's, a few more youths appeared. Their auras were extremely powerful, and their bodies were shrouded in the power of laws. 5 young men appeared one after another. After they appeared, they stood side by side with Arthur, the so-called Son of God. Behind them, other members of the God race appeared. After those people appeared, they stood behind the 6 of them with respectful expressions. Arthur turned around to look at them and said, "Although we can only bring these people out this time, in the Divine World, those who have awakened the power of rules are invincible." The others nodded continuously. One of them said, "Brother Arthur, since we've arrived in the Divine World, let's part here. We'll meet again in the future." "All right. It's been a long time since I've returned to the 9th region. I wonder if Father God will be surprised when he sees me." The group then parted. Arthur left with more than 10 9th-grade God Kings. Arthur, the eldest son of God Tajan, also had the bloodline of God Tajan before he became a god. In fact, after the death of God Zeus, there was some news that Tajan had already started the marriage alliance at that time. Ichien's birth was due to her powerful god bloodline. Hence, she had been in the womb for many years. In addition, Ichien was only ranked 5th because she had awakened the pure god bloodline too late. It wasn't because of her birth. After thousands of years of development, the Divine World had been completely covered by ancient trees. Many experts were living in the tree cities. These experts all came from the Life Star. They were training in the training grounds here. Weapons and armors were built in the cities here and transported to the Divine World to be exchanged for more resources. This place had been developed into a base camp. At the same time, according to Su Mingyao's original plan, they would start to develop outside the Divine World. They would build some low-level training grounds for the cultivators of the Life Star to train. Many star areas on the Life Star had been connected. Among them, there were more than 10 teleportation formations from the Zhanwu continent to the Heaven Martial continent. After Su Mingyao had made the plan, she continued to cultivate in seclusion. Although there was only one level between the 8th and 9th grade, it wasn't easy to cross the gap. In the City of Trees in the God World, his true body was in seclusion, while his Netherworld clone was overseeing the city. His battle prowess was no weaker than his true body. The radiance of the teleportation formation in the city never stopped. There were people coming and going continuously. These people belonged to the City of Trees. This city was never open to the public. When the Netherworld clone was patrolling the city, he saw Yi Qian, Xian Lin, and a few other women walking on the bustling street. After a long time of development, this city had everything they needed, from resources to food. They even had many specialties from different places on this Life Star. With the supply of so many Immortal King's soul essences, Xian Lin's realm had advanced by leaps and bounds. She had already reached rank 7. This time, she should have just broken through, so it was rare for her to rest. When the women saw the doppelganger nodded at them and prepared to go around them. Right at this moment, the space above the city suddenly distorted, and the figure of an old man appeared. It was the steward of the Heavenly God Manor, Siluo. Back then, Zichin had given Siluo a teleportation token. If Heavenly God's city was in danger, Siluo could teleport here for help. Right now, Butler Siluo had used his only transmission token. It was clear that something had happened in Heavenly God's city. Whoosh! The Netherworld clone's figure flashed, and he was already in the air. Butler, what happened? Silua looked at Zichin with a strange expression. The Zichin in front of him gave him a gloomy and cold feeling. He subconsciously didn't want to get close to him. It was very different from the Zichin he knew. I'm a doppelganger. My true body is in seclusion breaking through. If there's anything you can tell me. Seeing the strange expression on the butler's face, the Netherworld clone said directly. Something has happened in Heavenly God's city. Arthur has returned, and the subordinates he brought are all experts. They defeated Bahi in one move, Butler Silio said anxiously. Now, he wants to take control of Heavenly God's city and everything in it. Arthur? Who is that? The Netherworld clone was startled. It's the eldest son of Heavenly God. He's been gone for a long time. I didn't expect him to return this time, Butler Silio said. He said he's from the God Monarch Heaven Domain. Everyone who entered the God Monarch Heaven Domain had awakened the power of laws. Their battle prowess was much stronger than the God race of this world. If the other party really came from the God Monarch Heaven Domain, then they had to treat him seriously. Yi Qian and Xian Lin heard their conversation and couldn't help but be startled. Arthur was the eldest son of Heavenly God, but they had never seen him before. Pa Tian! The Netherworld clone's voice sounded. The door to Potion's residence opened. Pa Tian walked out and said lazily, What's the matter? There's trouble. We have to go to the Heavenly God estate. The Netherworld clone looked at Butler Silio and said, How many people do they have? 16, Butler Silio said. If it was only 16, then there was no need to worry. The Netherworld clone looked at Xian Lin and Yi Qian and asked, Are you going? Xian Lin was hesitant. Yi Qian nodded and said, Let's go and take a look. Take me with you. I've seen Big Brother. Maybe we can discuss this. Kai Meng appeared. All right. The Netherworld clone nodded. This time, other than the 3 Heavenly God children, he didn't bring anyone else. He returned to the Heavenly God estate with Butler Silio. When they appeared, they were already in the Heavenly God estate. You're quite fast. I thought we would have to wait for at least a year. Just as the group of people appeared, a faint voice sounded from the main hall. Big Brother, it's really you! Kai Meng cried out in surprise. So it's Kai Meng. I haven't seen you for many years. You're still so weak. Are you here to persuade me? I advise you to give up. Otherwise, you'll be beaten again. Arthur's voice sounded again. The Netherworld clone looked around. Bahi and a group of experts were outside the main hall. Many of them were injured. It was obvious that they had fought before. When they saw Zichin appear, they saluted Zichin. Their expressions were very unnatural. At that time, they had solemnly promised that they would protect the city. In the end, not only did Arthur come in, but he also occupied the Heavenly God estate. The Netherworld clone said, This matter has nothing to do with you. After saying that, he walked into the main hall. Who are you? Did I allow you to come in? A cold voice sounded from the main hall. The Netherworld clone stopped and said, In that case, come out and fight. You're courting death. In the main hall, killing intent surged. Then, a person flew out and went straight for the Netherworld clone. This was a 9th grade expert. His body was surrounded by the power of rules. He punched at the Netherworld clone. A black shadow appeared behind the clone. It looked like a black snake. It flashed and disappeared. The Netherworld clone punched out. Chapter 3189. There was a brief silence in the hall. After a while, Arthur's voice was heard again. This is not the power of the realm of the gods. His voice was no longer indifferent and arrogant. Instead, it was more dignified. The Netherworld clone didn't say anything. The Netherworld energy that was swirling around his body gradually dissipated. Seeing this scene, Heavenbreaker's eyes revealed a touch of satisfaction. When that guy was an enemy, he was very difficult to deal with. Now that they were friends, it was a great thing. The rank 9 who were waiting in the hall walked out one after another. They stared at the Netherworld clone as soon as they appeared. They thought that with their strength, they could defeat everyone in the realm of the gods. The fact was that Bahi, who was said to be able to compete with the experts on the king ranking, could not even withstand a single blow from them. They did not expect that the person they found would defeat a rank 9 with a single blow. One should know that that was the rank 9 of the Divine King Heavenly Domain, not the rank 9 of this world. Arthur was the last to walk out. He was wearing a colorful robe with armor under it. He was very handsome. His eyes were looking up and down at the Netherworld clone. It was the first time the Netherworld clone saw Arthur. After all, he was Yi Qian's brother. It would be best if they did not fight. "Who is this guy?" Arthur looked at Kai Meng and asked. "He is Sixth Sister's fiancé. He can be considered as a clone, but he has his own thoughts," Kai Meng said. Arthur's expression changed slightly. If a clone was so powerful, what about the real body? A light flashed in his eyes. Kai Meng was not used to this kind of gaze. He subconsciously took 2 steps back. "You have awakened the power of rules. How is that possible?" Arthur was a little surprised. "I came out of the Divine King Heavenly Domain 1,000 years ago," Kai Meng said. "Impossible. You can only come out when you reach the rank 9. How can it be so easy?" Arthur shook his head. The rank 9 behind him did the same. They had paid a huge price to come out of that area. The most important thing was the bloodline of Arthur and the other children of gods. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to come out. "Zichen has a way to bring us out. Moreover, we did not go to the last level. Instead, we went to the 2nd level," Kai Meng said. No wonder. Arthur suddenly thought of something. When he was in the Divine King Heavenly Domain, it had been a long time since the people below had come up. Although no one really cared about what was going on, it had become a topic of conversation in that world. Some people even thought that the people below had been annihilated by creatures from another space-time. From the looks of it, those people were not annihilated by the space-time creatures, but were intercepted. As such, he had no choice but to face this powerful fellow who was only a clone. "If you want to stay in this city, you can, but you can't stay in the Heavenly God estate. This is what the Heavenly Deity left for Goddess Xian Lin," the Netherworld clone said. "Goddess Xian Lin?" Arthur's frowned. On his way back, he had already learned about the situation in this world. Thus, after arriving at the Celestial God Manor, he was focused on seizing power, so he did not speak freely with Si Luo. "This is 6th Sister Yi Qian, and this is 7th Sister Xian Lin," Kai Meng introduced. Arthur's frowned and remained silent. The Netherworld clone continued. "I don't want to fight you," Arthur said. "You don't want to?" The Netherworld clone nodded. "That's right, I don't want to, not that I don't dare. If I want, including you, none of the 16 of you will be able to leave alive." A cold smile appeared at the corner of Arthur's mouth. "You are arrogant enough," the Netherworld clone corrected. "This is confidence," Arthur said. "Since that is the case, then I will acknowledge you. You should know what happened in the Heavenly God realm, and also know the situation in the Heavenly God realm. Why don't you and I join hands and create another flourishing age?" The Netherworld clone looked at Arthur's and said, "You are too reckless. Before you make a decision, you should carefully understand this world." Arthur said mockingly, "Is it because the son of the Heavenly God doesn't want to participate? You believe this kind of nonsense? Everything in this world depends on human effort." The Netherworld clone shook his head and said, "This is what you think, it has nothing to do with me. If you want to do something in this world, with your strength, it should be enough. If you want to become a king or a heavenly god, we will not stop you. But if you have any ideas about this city and the Heavenly God Army, please forgive me for not being able to accompany you. You really won't cooperate?" Arthur's eyes became incomparably cold. The Netherworld clone said indifferently, "Don't try to threaten me. You only brought out these people, and if a few more die, the gains will not make up for the losses. Speaking of which, you came to this heavenly god manor and beat up people, but you are still alive now, not because of your identity as the son of the heavenly god, but because of your blood relationship with goddess Ichien. But I am very sorry to say that this relationship can only protect you once, so if you do anything extreme, you will have to bear the consequences. Arthur was furious. You really think I am afraid of you? After returning to the heavenly god realm, his journey back was naturally not so smooth, so all the existences that dared to make a move against them, whether it was a single god race or a force, were not able to last a round in his hands. Thus, he understood the overall strength of this world, and felt that he could do whatever he wanted. This was the first time he was threatened like this. The Netherworld clone stood there and said, "This has nothing to do with whether you are afraid or not." Arthur's eyes were fixed on the Netherworld clone. His eyes were filled with killing intent. The Netherworld clone's expression was still calm. The 9th rank cultivators that Arthur had brought with him had very serious expressions. They felt a strong oppressive aura from the Netherworld clone, and this aura made them feel very threatened. Just as Arthur and the Netherworld clone were facing off in the heavenly god manor, a ray of light descended from the sky and landed outside the city. The light turned into a man, wearing a bamboo hat on his head and holding a long saber in his hand. Unlike the weapons of the heavenly god realm, this saber had a scabbard. He looked at the heavenly god city in front of him and said, "Through the aura, the person who broke the rules should be here." He walked into the city, passing by cultivators along the way, but no one noticed the bamboo hat man's existence. "Good! Very good!" In the heavenly god manor, Arthur nodded repeatedly, a cold light in his eyes. The Netherworld clone was still silent, but he did not know why, but he had a bad feeling in his heart. "I will investigate you properly, and I will also come back. Only the strongest are worthy of the things that father left behind." Chapter 3190. This time, they were forced to leave. This was completely out of Arthur's expectations. He did not expect that there would be such a powerful existence in the realm of the gods. Most importantly, the other party had the ability to leave the realm of the gods. If it were not for their bloodline of the gods that could stabilize the space-time tunnel, it would be impossible for them to leave the realm of the gods. However, even with the bloodline of the gods, each of them only brought out a dozen rank 9 martial artists. "Looks like I have to investigate this guy," Arthur thought. Arthur thought to himself. He had no interest in getting acquainted with Ichien and Xian Lin. In the realm of the gods, kinship was superfluous. Everything depended on one's strength. After walking out of the palace of the gods, Arthur saw someone walking towards him. It was a man wearing a bamboo hat. He held a sheathed saber in his hand. This attire was rare. For some reason, Arthur felt a sense of threat from the other party. After seeing Zichen's clone, Arthur's underestimation of this world weakened. He instinctively stopped and looked at the other party with a frown. He suddenly felt a sense of danger in his heart. The rank 9 martial artists that Arthur brought also noticed the man in the bamboo hat. They all stopped and looked at him cautiously. The man in the bamboo hat had also stopped. He looked at Arthur and the others and said, 16. "Who are you?" Arthur shouted. The aura around him surged and he got into a battle stance. At the same time, the 15 rank 9 martial artists that he brought with him all released powerful auras. Once the aura of the rank 9 martial artists was released, the surrounding space seemed to become extremely sticky. An invisible pressure spread in all directions. In the palace of the gods, Bahi and the others were surprised when they saw Arthur leave just like that. They didn't expect Zichin to be so powerful. Just one of his clones was enough to intimidate Arthur's and his group. They all went forward and bowed to the Netherworld clone. In these years, they had already figured out the relationship between Zichin and the goddess. He was the goddess's fiancé, but in reality, everything was decided by Zichin. It could be said that the heavenly god's city belonged to Zichin in the future. Apart from that, they also knew about Zichin's deeds in the 10th domain. The war with the outsiders went on for years, and in the end, the outsiders were the ones to be defeated. At the same time, all of the cities he built were cities of peace, and were filled with people. It could be said that Zichen himself was a powerful force. Many forces in the divine world fought with their lives on the line, but no one dared to provoke Zichen. You can't blame anyone for this. The person who came was too strong. It's only right that we didn't fight to the death. The Netherworld clone looked at the generals led by Bach and said, "If there is anything else, remember to inform us as soon as possible." "Sir, are you preparing to leave?" Bach asked. The Netherworld clone nodded and said, "The Divine City still needs to be guarded, so we won't stay for long. Since Arthur's has already left, I believe that in a short period of time." Before the Netherworld clone could finish his words, he suddenly turned his head and looked out of the heavenly god manor. In that direction, a powerful aura rose up. This aura spread out and covered the entire city. The hearts of Bahi and the others immediately tightened, and their breathing became stifled. The aura released by the 16 rank 9s was not suppressed at all, and the pressure was extremely terrifying. "What happened?" Butler Silio asked. "All of you stay here. Don't go out," the Netherworld clone said, and then flew out of the heavenly god manor. At this moment, he no longer cared about the rules. However, just as he rose into the air, he saw a saber gleam shooting up into the sky. In that saber gleam, there were several rank 9s whose bodies had been cut apart. At the same time, the Netherworld clone heard a voice lingering in the heavenly god city. "I'm a sword servant. Rules, overseer. I'm a sword servant. Rules, overseer." This was the bamboo hat man's response to Arthur's. At the same time, he drew his saber with his right hand. "Retreat!" When the other party moved, the sense of danger in Arthur's heart grew stronger, so he immediately retreated. At the same time, he did not forget to warn the people around him. His warning was timely, but not everyone retreated. Among them, 5 saw that the sword servant was about to attack, so they rushed forward. In the end, they encountered the saber gleam, and their bodies were cut in half. They came from the Divine King's celestial territory and wore the sturdiest battle armor, which was of higher quality than this world's king armor, but they still could not block this saber. The surrounding Protoss had already retreated far away in fear. The aura from before had suffocated them. Clearly, these were the true powerhouses. However, they did not expect this strangely dressed bamboo hat man, who came from nowhere, to be so powerful. He killed 5 of them with one slash. They retreated again and again, all of them terrified. There had not been a battle in this city for more than 1,000 years. The last battle was more than 1,000 years ago, when a man named Zichen fought in the city. Some people still vaguely remember that at that time, the other party also wielded a saber, but it was an arrow that determined the outcome. Looking at this bamboo hat man now, it seemed that he was even more powerful than Zichen back then. "You have broken the rules. I am ordered by the rules to eliminate you all," the sword servant said again, and the second slash cut horizontally. A saber arc scattered in all directions and swept into the distance. The advancing saber arc continued to expand. It was at least 1,000 feet long, enveloping the 11 people in the field. Including Arthur's, the moment the saber arc arrived, they felt as if they had lost control of their bodies. They could not sense the existence of power, and could only watch helplessly as the saber arc extended in front of them. It was as if they had lost all the power they had worked hard to cultivate in the saber. Blood splattered everywhere. Among the 11 people, 10 rank 9 powerhouses' bodies were cut apart. With 2 slashes, only one of the 16 rank 9 powerhouses survived. That person was Arthur's. He was able to survive not because he was strong enough, but because at the critical moment, a force fell on him and brought him back. When Arthur's came back to his senses, he saw that the guy who had forced him out of the divine residence earlier, who was said to be a clone, was standing in front of him. "When did you provoke such an existence?" The Netherworld clone stared at the sword servant in front of him, his expression becoming extremely solemn. Arthur said angrily, "How would I know? I don't even know him." He said he was some kind of rule regulator and that I had broken some rules. At this moment, Arthur's was already regretting it. First, he had encountered the clone, and then he had encountered the even more terrifying sword servant. If he had known that the heavenly realm was so dangerous, he would not have come out no matter what. He had gone through so much trouble, but had almost lost his life. Those who stand in my way, die. The sword servant was obviously a man of few words. Even if it was a warning, he only said it once. He held the saber in his right hand, raised it high in the sky, and slashed downward. Chapter 3191. This attack had not locked on to the Netherworld clone before, so the clone could easily rescue Arthur. But now, after experiencing this attack personally, the Netherworld clone realized how terrifying this attack was. This attack had displayed the power of space to the extreme, and there was even an indescribable rule power. This rule power seemed to have surpassed the rule power that a godly king could control. In other words, this was the application of the laws of heaven and earth. Seeing that the attack was about to land, whether it was the Netherworld clone in front or Arthur behind, they could not move at all. At this moment, an endless amount of Netherworld power surged out from the Netherworld clone's body and turned into a giant Netherworld beast. When this giant beast enveloped the Netherworld clone's body, the oppressive force disappeared and the Netherworld clone quickly retreated. As he retreated, he did not forget to take Arthur with him. The attack landed on the ground with a strong gust of wind, blowing up a lot of smoke and dust. Seeing this scene, the Netherworld clone was even more shocked. He would not have been so surprised even if the previous attack had split the city into two. But such a terrifying attack had been so easily withdrawn. This person's control of power had reached an extreme level. The sword servant, who had put away his sword, looked at the Netherworld clone and slashed again. This attack was still as powerful and terrifying as before, but as soon as the terrifying pressure fell on the Netherworld clone, it was shaken off by the Netherworld power. The Netherworld clone clenched his fist and punched out. The fist aura that flew out seemed to turn into a flying snake and collided with the sword aura. With a loud bang, the sword aura and the flying snake shattered. The Netherworld clone's expression changed slightly. This attack was not an ordinary attack, but he had mastered various combat skills of the Netherworld. His power had reached the limit of this world. The sword servant's gaze turned cold as he slashed again and again. The Netherworld clone used the Netherworld combat skills to block and neutralize the power of each attack. When Arthur saw this scene from behind, he was extremely shocked. Only now did he truly feel the power of the Netherworld clone. Qian, Xian Lin, and the others appeared outside the divine residence and looked up at the battle in the sky. "Who is that person? How can he be so powerful?" Bach said in shock. "Did he also come from the godly king's heavenly territory?" Qian shook her head. She knew what kind of existence the Netherworld doppelganger was. If the other party could fight the Netherworld doppelganger to a standstill, one could imagine his combat strength. After all, the power of the Netherworld clone came from the Netherworld. There was only one Netherworld in this world, and it was in existence from the same era as Heaven Crushing. Qian turned around to look at Heaven Breaker. Heaven Breaker also had a puzzled look in his eyes. Clearly, he didn't know who this person was either. Furthermore, Qian discovered that the Netherworld clone was actually unable to do anything to the other party. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged hundreds of blows. The Netherworld clone, who had used a great deal of strength in each attack, gradually began to feel weak. However, the sword servant acted as if nothing had happened. "Those who break the rules die." He put away his saber and stared at the Netherworld clone as he said coldly. Another slash came down. The world suddenly brightened, and the entire city was completely illuminated. Everything in the surroundings seemed to have disappeared. In the eyes of the Netherworld clone, there was only this blade left. His expression was solemn as a soaring serpent appeared behind him. The soaring serpent soared into the sky and collided with the saber ray with a hiss. Boom! Heaven and earth shook, and the entire city seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. The saber gleam disappeared, and the soaring serpent turned into energy and dissipated. A blood-curdling scream came from afar. The Netherworld clone turned around abruptly, and saw that a second sword servant had appeared in the city for some reason. At this moment, he had already put away his saber and stood upright. In front of him, Arthur's had already fallen into a pool of blood. His eyes were wide open, filled with horror, and the light in his pupils had faded away. One sword servant was already on par with the Netherworld clone, and now there were two of them, one in front and one behind. The two sword servants stared at the Netherworld clone. Swoosh! Heaven Crushing transformed into a longbow with a shake of his body. The heavenly needle appeared on its own and was knocked on the longbow, waiting to absorb energy. One of the sword servants glanced at Heaven Crushing, then his gaze fell on the Netherworld clone again. However, there was confusion in their eyes. Seeing that they had no intention of attacking again, the Netherworld clone asked, "Who are you?" "Sword servants. Rule overseers. Everyone who breaks the rules must die," one of the sword servants said. The Netherworld clone's expression remained unchanged as he asked, "Do you mean that the few of them have broken the rules?" The sword servant nodded. The Netherworld clone's heart skipped a beat. He pointed at himself and asked again, "What about me?" There was confusion in the sword servant's eyes. After a moment, he shook his head. The Netherworld clone's mind immediately turned. He pointed at Cayman, who was not far away, and asked, "What about him?" The sword servant glanced at Cayman. His gaze made Cayman's heart tremble, and he instinctively wanted to retreat. The sword servant shook his head again. "What if he becomes stronger? What if he's at the same level as them?" The Netherworld clone quickly asked, not intending to give the sword servants any time to consider. "Die," the sword servant said coldly, his eyes flashing with cold, killing intent. The Netherworld clone nodded and said, "I understand." The two sword servants glanced at the Netherworld clone again, their eyes still filled with confusion. The next moment, their bodies disappeared into thin air. The entire city was still quiet. The Protoss in the distance did not even dare to breathe loudly. The Netherworld clone turned around to look at the confused butler and asked, "Butler, who else came back with Arthur's this time?" The butler shook his head and said, "I don't know. I didn't get to talk to him. He wanted to take over everything here by force as soon as he arrived. I overheard their conversation. It seemed that there were several other sons of God." Bach said, "I think there was one called Kagat." The Netherworld clone looked at the butler, who shook his head to indicate that he had never heard of this son of God. "Investigate this matter carefully. See if all of them have met with misfortune," the Netherworld clone instructed. Butler Silio nodded. "Deal with these bodies, then we'll return to Tree City," the Netherworld clone said. Several people immediately flew out of the divine residence to deal with the bodies. The rest of the matter was left to Butler Silio. The Netherworld clone immediately led the people back to Tree City. After Heavenbreaker returned with his clone, he went to the divine residence again. Next, he needed to bring back the information that the butler had gathered. Zichin had left the Divine King's celestial territory for a long time. Many of those who had followed him out back then had reached the realm of rank 8. As for rank 9, there had not been a single one so far. It was said that Tai Jian was about to break through the realm. If he guessed correctly, after Tai Jian broke through the realm, he would inevitably attract sword servants again. This was because rank 9 was not allowed to exist in this world. Chapter 3192. According to the clues obtained by Butler Silio, these people had died at about the same time as Arthur's. In other words, sword servant was not a person's name, but a collective term. For example, the heavenly god army left behind by the heavenly god. Everyone in it was a heavenly god army. To verify his guess, the Netherworld clone went to God King Sander and the others to ask if they knew what level of existence a sword servant was. In the end, no one knew the answer, not even the alien races. After the Netherworld clone returned, he called Iron Sword and told him not to break through the realm yet. At the same time, he also told him about the sword servants. When Iron Sword heard that several rank 9 powerhouses had been killed in one move, his face immediately turned pale. Spread the news. Tell everyone not to break through for the time being. Everything will wait until the real body breaks through, said the Netherworld clone. Naturally, this was a big deal. With these sword servants around, all rank 9 powerhouses would not be able to survive in this world for long. They would only need one move to end a battle. The clone had already broken through to rank 9. Next, the real body only needed to borrow the clone's soul energy to break through, which was relatively easy. In less than a year, the real body broke through to rank 9. The yin and yang forces swirled around his body. Zichen sensed his current state, and a smile appeared on his face. He walked out of the treehouse and looked up at the huge canopy of Jono above. His gaze seemed to penetrate the tree trunk and fall on the vault of heaven. At this time, his soul felt a resistance. It was only after reaching rank 9 because he was already standing at the peak of this world. One more step and he would break the barrier and become a heavenly god. Unfortunately, this barrier was extremely strong and could not be broken by external forces. No matter how great the opportunity was, it was useless. He had already reached the peak of this world. At this time, he felt that he was truly invincible. The Netherworld clone was the first to sense that the real body had broken through, so he immediately transmitted everything that had happened during this period to Zichen. Zichen saw everything transmitted by the clone and the smile on his face gradually faded. He saw the sword servant attack, the battle between the sword servant and the Netherworld clone, and the final conversation between the two. "Rule, Overseer," Zichen murmured, his expression turning solemn. "Patian said that those law enforcers didn't make a move against me. It should be related to your identity. It's said that you can conceal yourself from the heavens." The Netherworld clone's voice rang out in Zichen's sea of consciousness. "Who in the city is likely to make a breakthrough?" Zichen asked. "Iron Sword. Do you think it's possible for the sword servants to be killed?" "It's hard to say. I still haven't figured out whether the sword servant who killed Arthur's was a clone or someone else. If it's a clone, then it's fine. But if it's another person, then if one person can appear without a sound, then wouldn't more people appear?" This was the biggest problem. If there were too many sword servants, and they could not kill them all, it would be too dangerous for everyone. Zichen went to look for Su Mengyao. Regarding this matter, the two of them had to plan carefully. If it really didn't work out, they would have to send them away. Otherwise, if they continued to stay here, they would only die. Su Mengyao obviously already knew about this. She said, "The biggest question now is whether those sword servants are the Heavenly Realm's enforcers or the entire world's enforcers. If it's the Heavenly Realm, then they should only be in charge of this part of the world. Otherwise, they should be in charge of all places." Zichen frowned and said, "They can't possibly be everywhere, can they? Otherwise, how could those rank 9s survive? It's not the same. They may have their own duties," Su Mengyao said. Zichen nodded. This made sense. Su Mengyao said, "Besides sending them back, we have 2 other places we can try." "Which 2 places?" Zichen asked. "One is your world. It belongs to you and is complete. It should be able to avoid the sword servant's perception," Su Mengyao said. Zichen's eyes lit up when he heard this. His world was completely under his control. Outsiders did not have his permission unless they broke through the world barrier. That was his private territory. However, even if his world could shield the sword servant's perception, there was nothing in his world. Those rank 9s might as well return to the godly monarch's celestial territory rather than stay in his world. As if she had guessed Zichen's thoughts, Su Mengyao continued. "The second place is to send them to the Life Star." "The Life Star?" Zichen was stunned when he heard this. "That's right. You're a defiant on the Life Star. The rules there are controlled by you. You've broken through this time. When you return to the Life Star, the world rules there will also be complete. It can be said that the Life Star is your world. Even if those sword servants were to monitor it, they probably wouldn't be able to monitor that place. During this period, there was also the Thunder God Temple that they could go to, but Su Mingyao did not say this. This was because it was the same as going to Zichen's world. She believed that those rank 9s would definitely not be willing. Looking at Zichen, who was deep in thought, Su Mingyao said, "During this period, we can find a rank 9 to try. Let him stay in this world first, and then go to the Life Star. If the sword servants chase him to the Life Star, then we can only take the rank 9 away from here." If he wanted to know more, this was the only way to try. Zichen agreed and went to look for Iron Jian. He could only hope that Iron Jian could help with this kind of thing. After hearing Zichen's intentions, Iron Jian asked, "How confident are you?" Zichen said, "I can't say for sure. Maybe not even 10%, maybe 100%. We can't be sure if we can lure the sword servants out, but I'm confident that I can guarantee your safety." "All right then. Give me another half a year and I'll be able to break through," Iron Jian said. Zichen nodded. Half a year's time was considered very short for them. In the city, including the natives from the Divine Monarch's celestial territory, everyone stopped cultivating and paid attention to Iron Jian. During this half a year of Iron Jian's cultivation, Zichen discussed some details with the Netherworld clone. These details were nothing more than how to deal with the incoming sword servants. During this period, apart from Heaven Breaker, no one else could be of help. In the 5th month, Iron Jian had already broken through ahead of time. At the moment of the breakthrough, Zichen brought Iron Jian to the outskirts of Tree City. In the sky above a plain, Iron Jian sat cross-legged as he broke through. Zichen and the Netherworld clone stood guard beside him. Heaven Breaker stayed in the distance, ready to transform at any time. After the breakthrough, Iron Jian released a tyrannical aura all around him. This aura did not restrain itself at all and spread into the distance. At the same time, there was also a surge of power that rose into the sky, affecting the power of the natural order. Zichen looked around vigilantly. A ray of light descended from the sky and turned into a figure. He wore a bamboo hat on his head and held a sheathed saber in his hand. Chapter 3193. When he saw the sword servant appear, Zichen's pupils shrank. The Netherworld clone stepped forward in a flash and stopped the sword servant. "We meet again. Have I seen you before?" The sword servant looked the same, confusion written all over his face. They had the same face, but obviously the two were not the same person. Or rather, the sword servant did not have any memories. "What are you doing here?" the Netherworld clone asked. "Those who break the rules die." The sword servant stared at the Netherworld clone and said coldly, "Those who block the rules die." The Netherworld clone took a step back and asked again, "Are you the Heavenly Realm's guardians or this world's guardians?" The Netherworld clone did not wait for a response. The sword servant unsheathed the long sword in his hand and slashed at the Netherworld clone. Buzz! Netherworld power swirled around his body, breaking free from the binding of the invisible force and throwing a punch. With a loud bang, the fist and sword gleamed shattered. Next to the iron sword, a black hole appeared and swallowed the iron sword. Having lost his target, the sword servant was stunned and looked a little confused. The Netherworld clone said with a smile, "Look, the one who broke the rules has left." The sword servant looked around and could no longer see the iron sword. The confusion on his face gradually turned into coldness. "Those who block the rules die." He did not leave and swung his sword again. The Netherworld clone snorted coldly. Netherworld power rose from his body and turned into a huge flying serpent. The flying serpent opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the sword servant. The sword servant's sword slashed the flying serpent but could not completely destroy it. The flying serpent's surface dimmed, but its speed did not slow down at all. A vortex appeared in its mouth and swallowed the sword servant. A light suddenly appeared on the sword servant's body. His body seemed to have teleported and appeared in the distance. In the distance, Zichen's expression changed slightly. In that instant, the sword servant's body seemed to have dissipated into heaven and earth energy, and only reassembled when he reappeared. "Devour!" The Netherworld clone's eyes became extremely cold. The flying serpent transformed from energy, shook its body, and turned into a nether beast. This was a nether beast in its complete form. Countless netherworld power swirled around its body, and it opened its mouth to swallow the sword servant. The sword servant swung his saber repeatedly. The blade moved in a certain pattern and rose against the sky, leaving streaks of white marks in the air. His attack was extremely powerful enough to kill a rank 9, but it did not break through space. It was clear that the sword servant's understanding of rules had reached the pinnacle. The nether beast's body was riddled with cuts, but it did not slow down at all. It approached the sword servant and swallowed him whole. Countless streaks of netherworld power shot out, sealing off the space and freezing the sword servant's body. The distance between the sword servants and the giant mouth of the nether was slowly closing. He suddenly shouted as a strong light burst out from his body. Countless rule force shot out from his body and flew towards the netherworld's giant maw. Boom! 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 The rumbling sounds of energy explosions rang out continuously. Powerful ripples spread out one after another, causing the sealed space to tremble continuously. When a gap appeared in the sealed space, the sword servant appeared in a flash. The nether beast was still floating in the sky. Its eyes were even colder and filled with brutality. Die! The sword servant roared angrily, and a light flashed from his body. A second sword servant appeared beside the nether beast. He drew his sword and slashed down. The sword arc slashed out and landed on the nether beast's body, leaving an extremely deep wound. The nether beast was not a physical entity, but a manifestation of energy. However, when the sword landed on it, it was as if a wound was left on it, preventing it from healing. Zichen, who had been standing in the distance, moved in a flash. He used his true speed and arrived in front of the second sword servant. In his hand, he unsheathed the 9 Extremes weapon, which had been unsealed. Heaven and earth suddenly lit up as the blade of the sword fell. With a loud bang, the second sword servant was sent flying backward. At this time, the nether beast's second attack landed. More netherworld power appeared around them, as if forming a sealing territory. This time, the sword servant was trapped firmly, and could no longer move. Whoosh! The nether beast swallowed the sword servant. The sealing territory around them disappeared and the netherworld power dissipated. However, the nether beast did not disappear. The nether clone, who had been controlling the nether beast, suddenly turned pale and spat out a mouthful of blood. The nether beast in front of him exploded with a loud bang and the sword servant flew out. The sword servant's body was surrounded by rule-bending power. This kind of rule was beyond the control of a rank 9 divine king. It was a rule that had never appeared in heaven and earth. In other words, it was a rule that had never appeared in heaven and earth. His nether beast could not refine these rules and even suffered a backlash, which was why it spat out blood. What happened? Zichen asked aloud. The rules it mastered are indelible. I suffered a backlash, the nether clone said with a serious expression. They can't die. Oh? When Zichen heard this, he frowned again. The sword servant he had sent flying earlier was already charging at him. He did not have time to respond and slashed again. This time, he withdrew the power of Thunder Body and used the power of Yin and Yang. The power of Yin and Yang was surrounded by the rule that he had comprehended. This rule was called destruction. It destroyed everything in the world, including rules. The sword servant in front of him also slashed down with his sword. His sword contained the power that transcended the God King rule. 2 completely different blades met in an instant. The Yin and Yang blade, with an indomitable momentum and a unique rule that destroyed the world, swept past the sword servant's sword and then its body. The sword servant's charging body stopped. The powerful rule attack contained in the blade also dissipated in an instant. Swoosh! The next moment, the sword servant's body turned into spots of light and disappeared. Seeing this, the nether clone's expression changed. Obviously, Zichen's rule-breaking rule had the upper hand in this confrontation. After destroying one sword servant, Zichen turned around and his cold gaze fell on the second sword servant. This sword servant obviously did not know what fear was. He drew his sword and slashed down. This was a sword attack that could kill 10 rank 9 divine kings. It was extremely powerful. However, Zichen's sword attack was even more powerful. As the sword slashed through, the sword servant's body paused and then dissipated between heaven and earth. The disappearance of his body obviously meant that he was not a cultivator and did not have a real body. Perhaps he was a kind of heaven and earth rule. In the distance, Heavenbreaker's eyes lit up when he saw the power of Zichen's 2 sword attacks. Sheathing his sword, Zichen looked at the nether clone and said, "Let's go." According to the original plan, after fighting the sword servants here, they would go to the Life Star next. Previously, he had clearly sensed that his own world could isolate the sword servant's perception. Therefore, he was even more confident about the Life Star. When they returned to Tree City, the beings from the God King's heavenly territory who were waiting here burst into cheers. Through Jono's means, they had already seen the battle in the outside world. Next, Zichen walked into the teleportation portal and disappeared. Chapter 3194. Zichen teleported and appeared in the Tree City on the Life Star. As soon as he arrived, he didn't need to release his aura. The principles of this world could sense his existence. Thus, the earth and heaven were shaken. It seemed like the sky had opened a gap. Countless amounts of earth and heaven energy mixed with the principles of heaven and earth fell from the sky. Just like the water from the 9th heaven falling into the mortal world, the earth and heaven were shaken hard. Explosions echoed unceasingly. Countless amounts of earth and heaven energy were as thick as a surging sea. Although the principles of heaven and earth had been shaken when he was at the 8th level of God King realm, it was much weaker compared to this time. At this moment, the same scene happened in many places, including Xing Chen's Life Star. All creatures lifted their heads to look at the sky, watching the torrential river of energy. Water vapor hit their faces. That water vapor was the pure earth and heaven energy, which made people feel refreshed. Most creatures weren't unfamiliar with this situation. It was because the heaven-defying expert on the Life Star had grown again. Every time he grew, the principles of heaven and earth would change, and the level of the world would increase. To them, when the earth and heaven were shaken, it was the time for opportunities to appear. This was especially true for those who were stuck in bottlenecks. Amidst such turbulence, they could easily sense the bottleneck and smoothly break through. However, this time, the earth and heaven were shaken, which was different from the previous times. The earth and heaven energy falling from the sky was very pure and of high quality. Many experts who had reached the bottleneck had broken through their realms before they could sense this change. Some broke through one realm, and some broke through several realms consecutively. At this moment, in this turbulent world, all the creatures living on the Life Stars had a feeling that they had become one with nature. This feeling was like a part of the God soul that had been missing was now complete. If the principle of a Life Star was compared to a jade slip, this jade slip was broken. As Zichen's realm increased, the jade slip was slowly pieced back together. In this world, the 9th level of God King realm was called the 9th level of Ancestor King realm. After reaching this realm, it meant that all the pieces had been pieced back together. At this moment, the level suppression of this world on Life Stars was gone. As long as there was enough time, the Life Star would have an endless stream of 9th level of Ancestor King realm experts. Within the City of Trees, Zichen, as the heaven-defying cultivator of this world, felt this the most strongly. The moment the mutation ended, the grade of this world changed, becoming the same as the divine realm. Moreover, he did not need to try again. He already knew that this world could stop the sword servants. This was because in this world, as a heavenly defying one, Zichen had the final say. No matter how powerful the sword servants were, they could not come to this world to kill people. This was because sword servants did not belong to this world. Tai Jian's figure flashed and walked out of the Zichen world. "Is it okay now?" he asked uncertainly. Zichen nodded. "This is a Life Star. From now on, you will live here." There are so many small planets here. With your competence, you should be able to cross them easily. As long as the rules of the God Realm remain in place, you will never be able to return to the God Realm. From now on, it's up to you whether you want to develop your own bloodline aristocratic family here or become a rogue cultivator. Tai Jian nodded. This was a long-term problem, and he needed to consider it carefully. Originally, if the Protoss wanted to come to the Life Star, they only needed to open a passageway. However, now that the world order of the Life Star was complete, it was much more difficult for the Protoss to come to the Life Star. It was even more impossible to casually open a passageway. Of course, the previously constructed teleportation portals were still unaffected. Tai Jian released his own aura. This was a rank 9 aura. If this were the God Realm, this action of his would definitely attract the sword servants, but it did not matter here. After waiting for a full hour and not seeing any sword servants appear, Zichen turned back to the City of Trees in the God Realm. Next, he would send all the Protoss who were about to break through to rank 9 to the Life Star. As for those below rank 7, there was obviously no problem. Before this, Zichen had never thought that sword servants existed in this world. Their strength was beyond imagination, but the people of the God Realm did not know of their existence. After moving all the relevant personnel, Zichen decided to go to the Godly Monarch's heavenly territory again. This time, he planned to go to the uppermost level to have a look, which was where Arthur's and the others came from. Before he went to look for Fina to ask about what had happened in the past. Fina said, "I haven't been to the uppermost level, but many of my subordinates have. Their talents are high enough, so there's no point in continuing to stay on the second level." Zichen said, "I plan to go there. Do you want to come with me?" Fina looked at Zichen in surprise and said, "You're going to bring those people out as well?" Zichen nodded and said, "The Life Star I'm on has countless planets combined. Its area is no smaller than the God Realm, so it's enough for them to survive. The most important thing is that sword servants have appeared in the God Realm. There are too many uncontrollable factors. If the God Realm attacks the Life Star one day, with the current power of the Life Star, we won't be able to resist at all." In the last battle, Zichen had only used 3 cities to block the attack of the foreign tribes. However, the main reason the foreign tribes retreated was that he had killed his way into the depths of the planet. If a heavenly god appeared in the God Realm, he would no longer have an advantage in terms of combat strength. When that happened, if the foreign tribes attacked again, Zichen might not dare to say that he could resist. The most important thing was that if they invaded the Life Star, what awaited the Life Star would be a disaster. The reason why he was worried was because the Life Stars were much better than before. Now, even level 9 divine kings could appear here. Once 9 heavenly gods appeared in the God Realm and regained control, they might be the first to attack the Life Star. This was because Zichen thought of a word about reincarnation. When one reincarnation ended, everything would start again. If he did not want this to happen, he would have to find more powerhouses to guard the Life Star. When a great war broke out, the Life Star would at least have the ability to resist. Besides, Zichen had to guarantee that he would be alive. As long as he was alive, the rules of the Life Star would be complete. Only then would there be an endless stream of 9th-grade divine kings. Thus, after he had made all the preparations, he should leave. Fina understood Zichen's idea. She said, "If so, I will go with you. As long as those existences who went to the upper layer are still alive, I will be able to contact them. The master-servant relationship comes from the depths of the soul. It will never change." All right. This was also the main reason why Zichen had come to find Fina. When he arrived at that world, he would have a shortcut to know the situation there. After they had decided on the matter, Zichen told Su Mingyao about it. Then, he called Heaven Breaker and Fina. The 3 of them headed straight to the God King Heaven domain. After returning to the second layer, Zichen went to get his contribution token and exchanged it for some resources. Then, he put Fina and Heaven Breaker into his world. Then, he walked into the passage in the center of the city. One could come and leave from that place. Many people in the city saw this scene and were very surprised. Chapter 3195. This was the third layer of the Divine Monarch's celestial realm. Zichen, Fina, and Heavenbreaker stood there, looking at their surroundings with astonishment on their faces. Up ahead was a barren land. The energy between heaven and earth was in a frenzied state, and there was no vegetation as far as the eye could see. With such a frenzied energy, I'm afraid only cultivators of the 8th rank or higher would be able to survive here. Fina took in everything around her. Let's go and find someone to ask. This damn place is even worse than the one below, Heavenbreaker said exasperatedly. Zichen looked around and said, Then let's just find a random place to go. I sense a familiar aura over there. Fina pointed in a direction. The familiar aura Fina sensed naturally came from those foreign races. The three of them flew forward. After flying for several hundred miles, the energy between heaven and earth became even more frenzied. After flying for several dozen miles in the frenzied energy, Zichen saw a huge storm appear up ahead. That storm directly tore through space. A storm that can tear through space? Just how powerful is that? Zichen's expression changed slightly. That storm connected heaven and earth, directly entering the void. Rumbling sounds continuously came from afar. As long as there was such a thing in this area, it would be very difficult to survive. Immediately after, a scene that shocked Zichen appeared. He saw that within the twisting storm, a black shadow actually appeared. It was a huge beast. Its body was huge, like a huge mountain peak. It appeared from the storm and looked around blankly. Perhaps it was an illusion, but Zichen felt that it saw him. Its eyes were cold and filled with cruelty. However, before he could confirm whether that huge beast saw him, a group of people suddenly appeared in front of him. Compared to that huge beast, those people seemed very small. All kinds of energy, light, and powerful attacks landed on the huge beast. Following these attacks, some wounds appeared on the huge beast's body. These wounds were the most superficial, and could barely be considered superficial wounds. Many attacks fell like raindrops. Those people flew around the huge beast and attacked it madly. It seems like we've come to a strange place, Fina said. Zichen nodded. Those who came to this world were at least rank 8s, yet the giant beast was only lightly injured despite being besieged by a group of rank 8s. At this time, the giant beast began to counterattack. The surrounding figures immediately scattered. It could be seen that they were very experienced in dealing with this kind of giant beast. A large number of attacks flew out from the giant beast. Some people were too slow to dodge and were immediately sent flying. At this moment, a person flew out from the back of the team, holding a long saber in his hand, and slashed at the giant beast. This was a 9th grade cultivator. With one slash, a huge wound appeared on the giant beast's body. Blood gushed out from the wound. The giant beast's attention was attracted by this rank 9. From another direction, another rank 9 flew over and launched an attack at the giant beast. 3 rank 9s and more than 20 rank 8s appeared one after another. It took them an hour to kill the giant beast. After killing the giant beast, they burst into cheers and quickly went forward to dissect the giant beast's body. The storm that appeared earlier still had not dissipated. Suddenly, another tyrannical aura emerged from it. This time, a second giant beast appeared. Seeing this giant beast, the cheering crowd was stunned. Then, their expressions turned ugly. Let's go stop it. You guys hurry up and pack up, a rank 9s in the team said. Then, he flew forward with his saber. The other 2 rank 9s followed on his left and right. Previously, dozens of them had besieged the giant beast for an hour, and only then did they kill it. Now, another one had appeared. If they wanted to kill it, they would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Now, these 3 rank 9s only dared to say that they could stop it temporarily. They did not dare to hope to kill it at all. Jiaso, come back quickly! Not 1, but 2 giant void beasts! A loud shout came from behind. They saw a brawny rank 8 shouting, Put down the things in your hands and run! If you don't want to die, run faster! The rank 9's named Jiaso saw that another giant void beast had appeared in front of them. After this giant beast appeared, his gaze fell on the three of them. Being stared at by two giant void beasts, the three of them felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Their bodies seemed to be out of control. In this state, they would suffer heavy casualties if they faced one beast. Facing two of them would only result in complete annihilation. "Let's go!" The three of them retreated without hesitation. However, having been targeted by the giant void beasts, they might not be able to escape. "Hurry up and run!" "Wu Shi, what are you doing?" The brawny man who had warned them earlier shouted at a rank 8's. "It wasn't easy for us to kill a giant void beast. We can't just leave like this. Even if we leave, we have to take something. Otherwise, this trip will be in vain." The rank 8's named Wu Shi shouted at the brawny man. "You guys go. Don't worry about me." As he spoke, he held his saber and slashed at the giant void beast's corpse. However, his saber could only penetrate 1/10 of the giant void beast's body. "Ha!" Wu Shi shouted. His body released a strong light as he slashed again. This time, the saber went deeper than before. The two giant void beasts behind had caught up. Their terrifying aura made Wu Shi tremble all over. The circulation of his power was affected. "I don't believe it!" Wu Shi shouted angrily again and slashed with his saber. "Hurry up and run!" At this moment, Jia Se had already arrived in front of him. He grabbed Wu Shi and flew forward. Suddenly, the top of Jia Se's head darkened. A giant void beast had already arrived above him. "Damn it! You go first!" Jia Se grabbed Wu Shi and threw him into the distance. Wu Shi landed on the ground and shouted at Jia Se. "Captain? Hurry up and run! We'll catch up later!" Jia Se shouted. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the giant void beast's attack landed. With a bang, Jia Se was sent flying. The giant void beast's body was huge, but its speed was extremely fast. After sending Jia Se flying, it immediately dashed forward and attacked Jia Se a second time. At this moment, Jia Se spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could adjust his aura, the giant void beast's second attack had already arrived. "Jia Se! Jia Se!" The other two rank 9s shouted loudly. They were already in despair. In this state, it was already a problem for them to protect themselves, let alone save others. Jia Se's vision darkened. The giant void beast's attack had arrived. In the distance, Zichen, who saw this scene, said, "Its combat strength is very strong. It can pose a threat to rank 9s, but it's still much weaker than the sword servants." As he spoke, he was still standing where he was. By the time he finished speaking, his figure had already disappeared from where he was and appeared on the battlefield in front of him. On the battlefield, there was a loud bang and a powerful energy shock wave. Those who were already in despair saw the giant void beast, which should have killed Captain Jia Se in one blow, fly backward instead. Chapter 3196. Jia Se heard a roar in his ears. Then, a powerful energy surged around him. However, as soon as the energy reached him, it was blocked by an invisible barrier. A person appeared in front of him. He was not tall, but the huge void beast seemed even smaller in front of him. With just one blow, the void beast was sent flying and smashed into the distance. The smoke and dust brought up by the huge body was swept into the storm. Jia Se opened his mouth in shock. Similarly, the people in the distance were also shocked. The second void beast noticed the abnormality here. It immediately abandoned the two grade 9 powerhouses and rushed toward Zichen. Zichen's figure flashed. He arrived in front of the void beast and punched it. Everyone only saw a blur before their eyes. That person disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the void beast. They could also teleport like this in other places. However, within the range of the spatial distortion caused by the storm, their speed would be greatly suppressed. It was impossible for them to teleport to this extent. Boom! Another roar came from the sky. It was like a sudden clap of thunder. The second void beast crashed to the ground. blood kept spurting out of its mouth and nose. Another punch repelled the void beast. Then, these people saw a scene that they would never forget. They saw the black-robed Grade 9 powerhouse appear in front of the void beast again, and punch it again. Punch after punch. In their eyes, the extremely dangerous void behemoth was currently being punched by his opponent. With each punch, there would be a clap of thunder. Previously, the void beast could still roar a few times. However, after 5 or 6 punches, the void beast stopped roaring. Its huge body also stopped struggling. It was dead. It was smashed to death by a fist. Seeing this, the other void beast was about to escape. Trying to escape? A smile appeared on the corners of Zichen's mouth as his figure flashed and disappeared into thin air. Boom! Another roar came from the distance. The void beast that rose into the air was smashed to the ground. Next, the thunderous fists landed on the void behemoth's body continuously, and the rumbling sounds rang out again. Every time his fist landed, everyone felt their hearts beat violently. The scene before them had completely exceeded their understanding of strength. They had stayed in this world for an extremely long time, so they had naturally seen powerhouses before. However, among all the powerhouses they had seen, there was absolutely no one who could smash a void beast to death with just a fist. Could a 9th-grade divine king really achieve this? Or perhaps, the other party was a heavenly god who was even more powerful than a 9th-grade divine king? The rumbling sounds disappeared as the 2 void beasts were killed by Zichen. Zichen turned around and looked at the dumbfounded crowd in the distance. He said, "Who can tell me what is going on?" At this moment, these people were all dumbfounded. They also wanted to know what was going on. Jarso reacted quickly and immediately stepped forward to express his gratitude. Zichen nodded and said, "I just came here. Tell me about the situation of this world." As he spoke, he waved his sleeve and rays of the power of rules fell on the void beasts. These rules wrapped around the void beasts' bodies and disappeared. Jarso was even more shocked when he saw this scene. Zichen did not know what level of existence this void beast was, but when they fought earlier, he could sense that there was a vast amount of energy in its body. It was extremely valuable. Its body was like a mountain, but it was extremely heavy. Even though it was dead, its body still contained the power of rules. After seeing Zichen take away the 2 void beasts, everyone was extremely shocked. This was because they did not have the ability to take away the complete void beasts' bodies. Otherwise, they would not have dissected them earlier. Usually, when danger came, they would directly abandon the spoils of war and flee. "My lord, this is the Divine King's celestial domain," Jarso said. Zichen smiled and said, "I know. Tell me the details. What is the situation of this world? How many cities are there in total?" Although this question was very strange, Jarso still answered it. "There are no cities in this world," Jarso said. "No cities?" Zichen could not help but be startled when he heard this. Jarso sighed and said, "Yes, there are no permanent cities, but there are temporary camps. Those camps are not more than 100 years old." "Why is that?" Zichen asked, puzzled. "There are no mineral veins in this world, nor are there any other strange beasts. There are only the void beasts that my lord saw earlier. They come from the void and are extremely powerful. With these void beasts around, no city can withstand them. Moreover, the void storms are also very terrifying. They are constantly moving within a certain range, so no city can last for 100 years without collapsing. Over time, there are no more cities here, only temporary camps." This world was much crueler than Zichen had imagined. He glanced at the void beast's corpse that was being handled by others not far away and said, "This is the basis of your survival?" Jarso nodded and said, "Yes, the void beasts come from the endless void. Their bodies contain pure energy, and their flesh is comparable to high-purity energy crystals. Even compared to the Divine King's spirit essence in the world below, it is not much different." Zichen was a little surprised. In addition to their flesh, the weapons and armors refined from the void beast's bones are also much higher in quality than the ones in the world below. Zichen continued to ask a few more questions. All the rank 8 and rank 9 martial artists in this world relied on the void beasts to survive. In addition, this world also contained a special kind of energy. This kind of energy could help rank 8 martial artists break through to the next realm and recover the depleted rank 9 martial artists. It was just that the speed was slightly slower. Of course, the void crystals in the void beasts' bodies were still the most precious things. They contained a vast amount of energy. Roughly 2 of them could help a rank 8 martial artist break through to rank 9. While Zichen was asking Jarsel questions, the other 2 rank 9 martial artists joined in the line of decomposition. After a while, a rank 9 martial artist came with a void beast crystal the size of a human head. Zichen waved his hand and said, "You killed it, so you don't have to give it to me. Now take me to your temporary camp." After the battle here ended, Heavenbreaker and Fina came over and followed the team to the camp. As it turned out, the rank 9 martial artists living here gradually noticed the traces of the Void Storm's movement. Before the storm arrived, they would leave in advance. They were considered a mercenary team, and such teams were the most common in this place. They survived by hunting void beasts. This time, they had successfully hunted a void beast. Putting aside the loss of equipment, everyone had gained a lot. According to Jarsel, as long as they were frugal, they would not have to go out in the next few years. Chapter 3197. The so-called campsite was just a place where people gathered. Other than the buildings, there were no corresponding walls. When the storm comes, everything around will turn into nothingness, so there are no walls or real buildings here, Jiaso explained. Indeed, there were no real buildings. Some of the buildings here were formed by energy and required energy to maintain. Some were spatial objects, such as the hall that Zichen had used the most. This campsite was very lively. There were many people inside and various shops. It looked like a small town, and there was even a tavern. The rest of the team went to deal with their harvest, while Jiaso invited Zichen and the other 2 for a drink. Zichen nodded in agreement. It was hard for him to refuse such kindness. The tavern was not big, but there were many people. As soon as the door opened, a noisy noise came out. Zichen furrowed his brows slightly at the sight of such an environment. The originally lively tavern instantly quieted down. Everyone looked in Zichen's direction, and their gazes immediately fell on Fei Na. In this place, the goddess tribe was extremely rare, let alone a beauty like Fina. "Jiaso, where did this little beauty come from? I haven't seen her before." A burly man sitting in front of the bar asked directly, his eyes roaming over Fina. "Hu Ji, if you don't want to die, shut your mouth. This sir and madam are just here to take a look." Jiaso looked at the burly man and shouted angrily. The burly man's expression changed slightly, and then he looked at Zichen. He was very familiar with Jiaso. Jiaso was not only a rank 9, but his combat strength was also very strong. To be called sir by Jiaso, he was either a fat sheep or a strong warrior. However, those who could come to this world were obviously not just fat sheep. It was the latter. As a team leader, Jiaso was quite famous in this campsite. His sir made these people's eyes fall on Zichen, which saved them a lot of trouble. Fina smiled, and the whole tavern seemed to light up. Zichen didn't fuss over the fact that Jiaso addressed him as madam. He couldn't possibly explain it to Jiaso patiently. Heavenbreaker harumphed coldly in dissatisfaction. Someone as powerful as him was clearly being ignored again. However, it did not transform into a human form. It had always been in the form of a pet, so it was naturally ignored. As Jiaso's gaze swept across the room, a table immediately became empty. With a flick of his finger, 4 fingernail-sized crystals flew out and landed on the bar counter. This was the most appropriate use of void crystals. No one would be so extravagant as to use them for cultivation. Here, it was the most valuable currency. Soon 4 cups of wine were served. Although the surroundings were once again filled with discussion, it was much more restrained than before. Heavenbreaker took a sip and spat out the wine. What the hell is this? Is it even drinkable? The surroundings became quiet once more. One had to know that Jiasaw had bought this wine with a crystal. It was the most expensive wine in this place, so it naturally tasted extremely good. Yet, such a pet was directly rejected. This caused many people's expressions to become unnatural. Boring. After saying that, Heavenbreaker's figure flashed and disappeared. He had entered Zichen's world. Not bad. Zichen took a sip and said with a faint smile on his face. The people around him clearly heaved a sigh of relief. Have you guys always lived like this in this world? Zichen asked Jiasaw as he put down his cup. What else can we do if we don't live like this? This is how this world is. Jiasaw sighed and said helplessly. If I had known that this world would be like this, I would have stayed in the lower levels and never come up. However, it has been a long time since anyone came up from the lower levels. Perhaps they have already been destroyed by those foreign race bastards. Hearing the words foreign race bastards, Fina raised her eyebrows slightly, and a murderous aura appeared in her eyes. Jiasaw cast a knowing look at Fina. Clearly, he mistakenly thought that Fina also hated those foreign race bastards. Zichen said without batting an eyelid. The environment here is so bad, yet you guys are still fighting? Jiasaw smiled bitterly. We don't fight anymore, but there is still a lot of friction. Speaking of which, everyone here can be considered to be able to get along peacefully. Everyone's common enemy is the void beasts. Our goal is to survive. At this moment, the discussions around them were still very soft, and had even stopped. Zichen and Jiasaw's conversation had not been deliberately blocked, so everyone had heard it. However, everyone was very puzzled. This was obviously a rank 9 being, yet it sounded like he did not understand this world at all. Sir, I think you are a rank 9, right? Jiasaw could no longer hold back his curiosity and asked directly. Such a respectful tone caused the expressions of many people in the surroundings to change again. That's right. Zichen nodded slightly. He had not drunk any more of that wine after taking that sip. It did not taste good. Sir, you seem to not understand this world at all. Jiasaw said again. Yes, I only arrived yesterday. Zichen's answer made everyone's expressions change. He had only arrived yesterday, yet he was already a rank 9. How was this possible? For a moment, everyone's faces were filled with doubt. Of course, there were also doubts. Zichen did not care about what these people were thinking. He said indifferently, Actually, I came specifically to find you. Find us? Jiasaw was stunned when he heard this. The others became extremely vigilant. The environment here is so bad. Are you willing to leave this world with me? As soon as these words were said, the crowd was in an uproar. Then, it became silent again. Everyone looked at Zichen in shock. Even the tavern owner had stopped pouring wine at this moment. His eyes were fixed on Zichen. Sir, what do you mean? Jiasaw found that his throat was a little dry. He took a sip of wine and asked, Follow me, and I will bring you out of this damned world. Zichen smiled faintly. I will bring you to a world on the same level as the Divine Realm. You can even return to the Divine Realm, but the prerequisite is that you are not afraid of being slaughtered. Everyone's breathing quickened. Their faces were filled with disbelief, but more than that, they were filled with longing. When they came to this world, their lives were worse than death. Every day, they wished they could leave. What does that mean? You will be slaughtered when you return to the Divine Realm? Although Jiasaw was excited, he keenly grasped the problem. Have you heard of Arthurs? Zichen asked. Arthurs? The son of God? Jiasaw was stunned. He teamed up with some other sons of God and brought some people back to the Divine Realm. Now they are all dead. Before the crowd could recover from the shocking news that Arthurs had left this world and returned to the Divine Realm, they heard the news of their deaths. Their expressions became very interesting. Dead? How is this possible? Jiasaw could not believe it. Arthurs brought a total of 15 people. Including him, 16 people. That person used a total of 3 blades. Zichen took in everyone's gaze and said, "That's right. That person is much stronger than the Void Beast. He only needed one blade to kill the Void Beast." This news was too shocking for the people around them. Chapter 3198. The shrill alarm and the exclamations that reached everyone's ears woke up the shocked people in the tavern. They had no time to think about whether the stranger's words were true or not. At this moment, they flew out of the tavern as if it was a conditioned reflex. Of course, before that, they did not hesitate to gulp down the remaining wine in their cups, leaving the empty cups behind. In the blink of an eye, only Zichen, Fina, and the tavern owner who was standing at the bar counter with an uncertain expression were left. Zichen stood up and looked back at the tavern owner. He said, "Why don't you go?" The tavern owner said, "They won't really fight. I have to make more wine. There will be more people here later." Zichen smiled faintly, turned around, and walked outside. "What you said just now is true?" the tavern owner asked. Zichen turned and threw something to the tavern owner. The tavern owner caught it subconsciously and found that it was a pot of wine. When he looked up again, the other party had already left. "Wine, it's wine! Real wine!" The tavern owner's eyes showed an intoxicated expression. Even if the wine was not opened, he could still feel the quality of this wine. It was much better than the wine he brewed. At most, his wine was called wine, not wine. Of course, this did not mean that his skills were not good. It was just that there were no materials to brew wine in this area. It was very noisy outside. Loud shouts could be heard constantly. Zichen and Fina walked outside. At this time, Zichen's spiritual senses sensed that more than 20 people had appeared outside. They were all foreign clans, and all of them were rank 9. They stood outside the station with their backs straight and their backs straight. They were lined up in a formation like soldiers waiting to be inspected. They did not respond to the scolding and cursing. Zichen walked forward. Wherever he passed, an invisible force appeared. No matter if it was rank 8 or rank 9, they could not resist this invisible force and immediately retreated to the sides. During this time, some people wanted to curse. However, after seeing Zichen, they did not know why their hearts suddenly skipped a beat. The curses that just came out of their mouths were forcefully stopped. Zichen walked to the front and saw Jiaso. "My lord." Jiaso walked towards Zichen and said, "They don't seem to be normal." "Don't worry," Zichen said calmly. Zichen stopped at the front while Fina continued forward. At this moment, everyone's attention was on Fina. It was not only because of her beauty. Of course, this was also a huge reason. At the same time, they were also very curious as to why she wanted to go forward. Following that, a shocking scene appeared. As Fina stepped forward, those foreign races who were abnormally powerful in their eyes actually knelt down on one knee in unison, as if they were kowtowing to their king. In an instant, cries of surprise rang out again. Jiaso also looked at this scene in shock. Then, he looked at Zichen, who was beside him. He realized that this lord was becoming more and more mysterious. After a moment, Fina turned her head to look at Zichen and said, "I'll go look for them. After I find all of them, I'll meet up with you." Zichen nodded and said, "That's good too. Let Heaven Breaker go with you. He can sense my location." Heaven Breaker, who had originally entered Zichen's world, appeared again at this moment, and followed Fina very unwillingly. "You're kind, but they're very strong. They won't die even if you die." Heaven Breaker grumbled unhappily, but he still followed Fina. Under the lead of the foreign races, Fina disappeared from everyone's sight. The people in the tavern saw Fina with Zichen and heard his suggestion. At this moment, they all looked at him. Zichen took several steps forward, turned around to look at the crowd behind him and said, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Zichen. I'm from the Life Star. You may not have heard of this place, but some of you may know it. However, it doesn't matter. After you've made your choice, you'll have time to learn more about the Life Star. Otherwise, you don't need to learn more about it. Everyone was silent as they listened to Zichen's words. Aren't you curious why the people from the lower levels haven't come up yet? It's too bad that not all of them died in the battle. I intercepted them and brought them directly to the God world. The shock that this news brought to everyone was undoubtedly enormous, even greater than when they saw the foreign races bowing to that beauty. My purpose in coming here is to take you away from here. Those at the 8th level can choose to go to the God world, but those at the 9th level must follow me back to the Life Star. As for the reason, the God world is in chaos, and the God world has disappeared. The God world is currently in a state of disorder. However, there is a kind of existence called the Sword Servants. They are extremely strong and they specialize in killing 9th level experts. Zichen said, "Well, you can watch the specific scene." Zichen waved his hand, and a space appeared in front of them. In that space, images appeared. A man wearing a bamboo hat unsheathed his sword. In an instant, several God race experts were killed. Then, with a second slash, 10 more died. Next, the man in the bamboo hat was fighting with another person. After a while, a strong light appeared and the second man in the bamboo hat appeared, killing the last 9th level expert with a single slash. There were only images of the battle, no sound. Zichen said, "You may not know this person, but you should have heard of his name. His name is Arthur's, and this place is Heavenly God's city in the 9th heaven of the God world." "Isn't Arthur's in this world? Why is he in the God world? This can't be fake, right?" A doubtful voice came from the crowd. "Yes, that man is Arthur's. I have seen him once," a 9th level expert in the crowd said. "Even if he looks the same, there is no guarantee that this is true, right? What if it's a scam?" Obviously, there were still people who didn't believe it. Zichen smiled and didn't care about everyone's doubts. Jiaso said, "I believe that what the Lord said is true." "Why?" "Jiaso, you are not a careless person," someone asked. "Because just yesterday, the Lord saved my life from the hands of a void beast. Moreover, I saw with my own eyes that the Lord killed 2 void beasts with just his fists. There is no need for such a strong person to deceive us. Because if he wants, he can easily slaughter us." "What?" As soon as this sentence came out, it caused a great shock. They, who lived in this world, knew very well how powerful the void beasts were. Even if several 9th level experts joined forces, they would need to use all their strength to kill one. They had never heard of anyone who could kill a void beast with just his fists. Even the Son of God didn't have this strength. Chapter 3199. If they could leave this place, of course, they would be happy because this world wasn't suitable for living. However, as they had lived in this world for so many years, they had never relaxed their vigilance. One of them said, "There shouldn't be such a good thing in this world, right? What's your purpose?" Zichen noticed that many people had doubts in their eyes. Apparently, they were more skeptical than excited. He chuckled and said, "It's simple. When the Life Star is in danger, I need you guys to fight and protect the Life Star. Of course, the enemies won't be as strong as the Bamboo Hat Man. But I'm sure they will be many level 9 warriors. They could be the God Clan or the alien tribes." "Alien tribes? Isn't that man from the alien tribe? What's his relationship with you, Master?" asked another one. "She's my friend. Naturally, the non-humankind beings she leads are my friends as well. She's not from the alien tribes of the God world. She's from the lower level. The alien tribes of the God world are my enemies," Zichen said. "Of course, it's just my guess. Perhaps they won't attack the Life Star. At that time, you don't need to do anything for me. You will be free." At this moment, a level 8 God warrior walked out. He looked at Zichen and said, "I know the Life Star. It's made of countless planets. There are 2 famous places, the Sky Martial Continent and the War Martial Continent. However, as far as I know, those worlds are low level. They're just suitable for living. Perhaps their conditions are better than this place, but their energy is much weaker than this place." Zichen looked at him and smiled. So, you belong to a clan of the Starry Sky race? That's right. Level 8 nodded. Zichen looked at him and continued. If so, you should know that the life stars have the heaven-defying warriors. Or are you also a heaven-defying warrior? The other changed his visage, beaming a forced smile. What are our heaven-defying warriors? They call themselves that. However, he got it quickly, asking in astonishment. Could it be? Zichen nodded with a smile. It's impossible. That heaven-defying warrior. The other was astounded. He knew the life star well. He was also a heaven-defying warrior. He had participated in the operation to encircle the heaven-defying warriors. Of course, this heaven-defying person could be from the previous generation or the generation before that. However, this did not hinder his knowledge and understanding of heaven-defying beings. It was impossible for heaven-defying beings to become gods. Zichen smiled. Nothing is impossible in this world. The life star in the low-level world you mentioned is far beyond your estimation. Yeah, if you know about life stars, you can explain to us. He then turned his head and looked at Jasso. Jasso, I'll leave it to you to inform everyone. If you want to leave with me, pack up your things and we'll go to the next place. If you don't want to leave, you can stay here. The flow of time here is 10 times slower than in the divine world. 1 day here is equivalent to 10 days in the divine world, so I can only give you 2 days. Yes. Jasso quickly nodded. When Zichen returned to the tavern, he saw that the owner of the tavern was packing up his things. Where are you going? Zichen asked. Of course I'm going with you, sir, said the tavern owner. I've had enough of this shabby place. Zichen smiled and said, To be able to make wine in such a harsh environment, your winemaking skills are very good. Although it's not tasty, it's unique. The tavern owner smiled embarrassedly. Sir, you're overpraising me. My little tricks are. Before he could finish, the tavern owner's eyes brightened. Then, he clasped his fists at Zichen sincerely. Thank you for your advice, sir. Then, the tavern owner didn't pack his things anymore. He immediately walked out of the tavern while shouting, Deal with the wine. You can exchange the materials for the wine. Currently, the wine didn't taste good because this world didn't have any other materials. However, once they reached the life star and had other materials, the wine would taste better. The pure energy in the wine would increase the price several times. Besides, it also meant that the wine would be rare. Obviously, once he left, he wouldn't be able to return. Then, he would definitely be able to sell the wine for a sky-high price. Zichen, who had originally planned to go to the depths of this world, suddenly changed his mind. He called Jiaso over and ordered, Let your men spread the news. Instead of searching for them one by one, it's better to let them come here themselves. Jiaso understood Zichen's meaning and immediately went to do it. 2 days obviously didn't count. Zichen asked again. In this region, which place has the most void beasts? Jiaso guessed Zichen's intention and said, That place is the depths of this world. The storms there are endless, and the void beasts there are the most. Jiaso pointed out the direction to Zichen. Zichen nodded and disappeared. You have full authority to arrange for everyone who comes here. Take this thing. Crush it if there's any danger. I'll sense it. Zichen's voice resounded. A crystal fell from the sky and was caught by Jiaso. Obviously, this lord didn't want to waste time looking for people, so he was waiting for them to come. This lord should have gone to kill the void beasts. Thinking of how powerful this lord was, Jiaso observed 3 seconds of silence for those void beasts. Following Jiaso's instructions, Zichen used world teleportation to go deeper. Soon he saw a huge storm. Rather than saying that this was the depths of this world, it was better to say that this was the end of the world. It was a dangerous place where almost no one dared to come. Those who could come here were naturally experts among experts. In the storm that connected heaven and earth, void beasts constantly appeared. They bobbed up and down in the storm. Obviously, the terrifying storm couldn't stop them. Soon, they noticed the appearance of Zichen, a human. In an instant, many cold eyes fell on him. Zichen stood outside the storm, quietly looking at these void beasts. The sound coming from the storm became louder and louder. It was as if countless thunderbolts had exploded in the sky. It was deafening. The black holes in the sky continued to expand, extending toward him. Those void beasts were borrowing the power of the storm to move forward at an even faster speed. His black robe fluttered, and his black hair danced wildly in the storm, covering Zichen's eyes. More than a dozen void beasts appeared from the storm, bringing with them an extremely tyrannical might of heaven and earth as they charged toward Zichen. Zichen quietly looked at this scene, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. A ray of light appeared in his hand. The ray of light drew an arc, extending into the distance. It swept past the void beasts and the storm in the distance. The void beasts' bodies were split in the middle. Blood rained down from the sky, sprinkling onto the ground. The storm behind him suddenly disappeared, and Zichen's fluttering robe returned to normal. Chapter 3200. To the void beasts, they were like the overlords of this world. Today was the day of their destruction. A human killed more than a dozen of their kind with just one slash. Of course, this was not the end, but the beginning. After this human sheathed his long saber, he flew forward and rushed into the storm. This storm was a place that humans never dared to step into. It was like a forbidden area, but this common sense was broken today. Next, the end of the void beasts arrived. A ray of light appeared in that person's hand. That was the long saber being unsheathed. Unfortunately, no void beast could see this action clearly. The ray of light disappeared, and that person stood in the void. The raging storm disappeared, and the sky that was torn apart by the storm was quickly healing. Blood rain fell all around. The corpses of the void beasts fell from the sky and landed with a loud thud. Logically speaking, such a terrifying attack should have consumed a lot of energy. However, he did not seem to have consumed any energy. His expression was normal as he entered another storm. Light appeared in the storm again. The light cut through the storm and destroyed the void beasts inside. The storm disappeared, and that person disappeared again. Angry roars could be heard incessantly. Those were the sounds of fear made by the void beasts. The storm around them became more intense. These void beasts wanted to escape. At this moment, the world suddenly became quiet. The storm seemed to have stopped. A ray of light went straight forward from one edge of the storm to another. As the ray of light penetrated the storm, the rumbling sound was heard again. However, this was no longer the sound of the storm raging, but the sound of it dissipating. The storm disappeared. Countless blood rain fell and gathered into shallow pools. This storm group that had existed for God knows how many years, this place that was called a forbidden area by all the God clan, returned to peace. Zichen, who began to collect the void beasts' corpses, came to a conclusion. The void storm appeared because of the void beasts. It could be said that they could tear space and descend from the void. The storm was created because of their existence. He had gained a lot this time. Although these gains were useless to him, they could help Tyrant and the others to advance quickly if he took them back. After collecting all the corpses, Zichen turned his head and looked into the distance. There was a team of 30 people there. Since they dared to come to this place called the Forbidden Area, these people were naturally 9th grade. They were wearing excellent equipment. The weapons they held were also made of the hardest bones of the void beasts. At that moment, they stood there motionlessly as if they had been petrified. Morris was the leader of the team this time around. The rank 9s he brought along were all powerhouses. Although it was dangerous to come to this place, they often reaped great rewards. In the entire Divine Monarch Heaven domain, there were no more than 6 teams that dared to come to this place. Morris knew very well that the leaders of 5 teams had already left, and his team was the last one. However, he never thought that he would actually see a person today. The other party came here alone, and then flattened this area. "Sir, he is looking in our direction. Is he really on our side?" a 9th rank said, his voice trembling a bit. The person who spoke was an expert. He had plenty of experience in killing void beasts, and had brushed shoulders with death many times. Today, his subordinate who had long disregarded life and death was actually frightened to such an extent. This was the first time he had seen such a scene. I think so. He doesn't have the aura of an alien race, Morris said. He did not realize that his voice was a little dry. There was a clear difference between not being afraid of death and courting death. They could die in battle against void beasts, but they did not wish to be slaughtered by others. Are you all here to hunt void beasts? Zichen looked at the crowd who stood there motionlessly after they appeared and asked. Yes, sir, Morris said respectfully as he clasped his fist and bowed. I'm sorry, but there are no more void beasts here, Zichen said. Do you know where else there is such a place? The purpose of this, sir, was obvious. Morris immediately said. If you head north from here, there is a dangerous canyon. There are more void beasts there. More? Zichen's eyes lit up. Yes, we still dare to come to this place. However, if it was that dangerous canyon, we would definitely not dare to set foot there, Morris said. Oh, that's good. Zichen looked at Morris and said, There are no more void beasts here. We don't know when they will appear again. Do you all want to come together? Morris was about to shake his head. The level of danger in that place was extremely high. Behind him, many people had already begun to shake their heads. That was a deep-rooted danger. All their actions were subconscious. However, Morris reacted quickly. In the end, he did not shake his head and refuse. His expression changed. He was somewhat tempted. The original danger zone might not be the same for this lord. Perhaps that dangerous place would disappear soon. If they followed this, sir, they might be able to reap some benefits. Let's go! Morris gritted his teeth and nodded. Zichen smiled faintly. Then, he pointed to the north and said, Is it this way? Yes. Let's go. Zichen waved his big sleeve. A force descended from the sky and enveloped these rank 9s. They realized that they had lost control of their power in an instant. Their bodies could not move at all. The next moment, their bodies disappeared. Next, they seemed to be traveling through time and space. They released their divine telekinesis but could not sense anything. Although that lord did not have any enmity towards them, the fact that he was able to control them so easily still made them feel shocked. After a short while, things reappeared in front of them. The rumbling sound of the storm was in their ears. This is the perilous canyon! Looking at the scene in front of them, one of the rank 9s exclaimed. The previous area was extremely far away from this perilous canyon. They did not expect to arrive in an instant. At this moment, they had a better understanding of this sir's methods. Just like how he killed those void beasts, it would only take him one stroke to kill them. This is the place you were talking about, right? Zichen looked ahead. There was a huge canyon. The canyon was full of storms. The storms connected heaven and earth. Many void beasts were bobbing up and down in the storm. Compared to the previous place, there were more void beasts here. Sir, this is the place. Morris suppressed the shock in his heart and said respectfully. How many can you deal with at once? Zichen asked again. Morris was stunned. Then, his face revealed a look of ecstasy. He said, 5. It's easy. Whoosh. Zichen's figure disappeared from the spot and entered the storm. Chapter 3201. Looking at the 7 void beasts, Morris shouted, Fight! Although he said he could deal with 5 of them, that was because he was being cautious. Now that the void beasts had been directly beaten to this place, they were completely defenseless. Under such circumstances, it was almost no problem for them to deal with 7 of them. At this moment, the void beasts were indeed unable to react. Attacks fell one after another, landing on their vital points. The void beasts began to scream and counterattack. In the storm, Zichen struck with his blade. As the blade light slashed, a part of the storm disappeared, and the void beasts in it were all killed. There were indeed a lot of void beasts here. Zichen kept striking with his blade. During this time, he was still paying attention to the outside world. As long as Morris and the others killed the void beasts, he would not wait for them to decompose them, and would send the new void beasts out. After 2 hours, the storm in the canyon returned to normal, and the canyon also returned to its original appearance. Morris and the others stood at the side, panting. Each of them had consumed a lot of energy, and had even reached their limits. Usually, this would be the most dangerous time for them. In a place like this, no one dared to put themselves at their limits. But today, they had reached their limits. Not only did they not have the slightest worry, but their faces were full of smiles. Around them, dozens of void beast corpses were scattered. According to the distribution of resources, each person had more than one void beast. Such a huge harvest was unprecedented. And it had only been a little more than 2 hours since they started fighting. In addition to their tacit cooperation, the most important reason was that the void beasts that had been sent over by that lord were all a little dazed. They could take advantage of the opportunity to heavily injure them. But even though they were unusually excited, they could not help but feel shocked when they saw the storm in front of them disappear. Their harvest was not small, but that lord's harvest was even greater. However, that lord did not decompose the void beasts' corpses. Instead, he collected all the void beasts he killed. This was something they could not do. From the looks of it, they could barely decompose the void beasts' corpses and take away many important things, such as the flesh and blood, which would be wasted. This was not to say that their spatial spirit rings were not big enough, but because every part of the void beast contained a strong power of law. If there were too many things in the spatial spirit ring, the space inside the ring would become unstable and explode. When Zichen walked over, Morris quickly took out a bottle of wine and handed it to Zichen with both hands. "Try this." Zichen waved his hand, and the space in front of him distorted. Wine jugs appeared and flew towards the crowd. Everyone was curious. Could it be that the thing this lord took out was better than theirs? One had to know that the wine they were carrying was the most expensive wine in the world. Naturally, it was also the best. After opening the bottle, they no longer had any doubts. After drinking a mouthful of wine, everyone's eyes lit up. Although they did not know much about wine, they knew that this was definitely not something that could be produced in this world. Drinking a mouthful of this thing meant one less mouthful. Many people quietly put it away after drinking a mouthful, saving it for the next time. Zichen pretended not to see it. He turned to Morris and asked, "Where else can we find large void beasts?" Morris mentioned 2 more places. "I can see that your battle strength is not weak. How many teams like this are there in this area?" Zichen asked. "Originally there were 6 of us, but now we're the only one left," Morris said with a sigh. Zichen's heart skipped a beat. He said, "Could it be that one of the 5 is called Arthur's? Lord also knows Arthur's?" Morris said in surprise. "Yes, it's him. Unfortunately, he has already left this world. Perhaps he has already returned to the God realm? Since you know him, why didn't you follow him?" Zichen asked again. His expression was calm, without the shock or surprise that Morris had imagined. "It's because of us. Arthur said that he could only take Brother Morris with him. But Brother was worried about us, so he stayed here," a 9th-grade cultivator said. This time, Zichen was surprised. He looked at Arthur's and asked, "Why?" "They are too impatient and only know how to act recklessly. They seem to have strong battle strength, but no matter how strong the battle strength of this world is, even existences like the Son of God will be in danger. If I leave with Arthur's, they will soon be killed by the void beasts," Morris said. "Moreover, I am worried that after I leave, they will be used by people with ulterior motives. Especially those merchants, they are all evil merchants." Morris's words were spoken in an extremely calm manner, without the slightest hint of pretentiousness. The people behind him also smiled, not feeling too touched. From this, one could see that their relationship was indeed very good. "Then follow me," Zichen said. "Huh!" Morris was stunned. "All of you follow me," I will take you away, Sechin said again. Where to? Morris asked, puzzled. It's impossible to return to the heavenly realm. I will take you to a world no lower than the heavenly realm, Sechin said. Looking at the still puzzled crowd, Sechin said again. Although Arthur's returned to the heavenly realm successfully, he is dead. This news was undoubtedly shocking. These people's expressions changed drastically again. Sechin silently apologized in his heart, then used the space technique to condense an image again. It was the scene of the battle between the sword servant and Arthur's that day. Exclamations rang out one after another. These people not only recognized Arthur's but also the other rank 9 existences. In this world, they were all powerhouses. However, such powerhouses could not withstand a single blow from the man in the bamboo hat. Sir, what exactly is going on? Morris looked shocked, as did the others. The heavenly realm is in chaos. The whereabouts of the heavenly gods are unknown. The heavenly realm is the strongest, but you are rank 9. Your combat strength is far beyond those rank 9 existences, so the heavenly realm rules do not allow it. The man in the bamboo hat is called the sword servant. I guess he is a product of the natural order. His combat strength may not be able to fight against the heavenly gods, but killing a rank 9 is easy. In other words, the purpose of their existence is to kill all powerhouses above rank 9. Chapter 3202. The reason why Sechin wanted to recruit Morris personally was that his combat strength was strong enough, and he believed that his status in this world was also very high. If he were to step in, everything would be much smoother. This was also the main reason why he was willing to bring Morris and the others here. Morris had actually rejected Arthur's invitation for the sake of these brothers. This was a complete surprise for Lin Huang. These people had never heard of a life star, which made Sechin feel slightly regretful. However, he did not deliberately and patiently explain. Instead, he said that it was like the heavenly realm, where everything was there except for foreign tribes. Won't the sword servants kill their way to the life star? Morris asked. As long as I'm alive, those sword servants won't be able to reach the life star. Looking at these people's shocked expressions, Sechin said, It's not what you think. I'm not a heavenly god, I'm just a little special. As long as I'm alive, the life star's rules won't be weaker than those of the heavenly realm. In this case, the sword servants won't be able to pass through the rule barrier. Moreover, the sword servants don't supervise all places. For example, here, the sword servants won't be able to come. Morris asked again. Sir, you're willing to take us away. What do you need us to do? Sechin said. You just need to promise me one thing. What is it? When the life star is threatened, you have to protect it and fight against external threats. Morris did not expect Sechin to propose such a condition. He said in surprise, Is that it? Yes, that's the condition. Sechin nodded. Morris said, This isn't really a condition. We can't return to the heavenly realm, so we can only live on the life star. Once the life star is threatened, we'll be implicated, so of course, we'll have to fight. It doesn't really matter whether we agree to this condition or not. Sechin smiled and said, You're right, but the life star is very big. There will always be some people who think they can get away with it. What I'm worried about is that they'll flee from one continent to another, and when they finally realize that they have nowhere to run, the life star will have been destroyed beyond recognition. Sir, where does the danger you're talking about come from? It could be the god race from the divine world, or it could be a foreign race from the divine world. It could also be a combination of the two. Morris said in surprise. How is it possible that the two of them are working together? Sechin smiled and said, You'll understand when you get back. Sechin glanced at the corpses of the void beasts and said, You guys recover first. I'll keep these resources for you. You'll have plenty of time to decompose them after we leave this place. Next, we'll take down the void beasts in the last two places. From now on, you won't even have the chance to come here. Yes. Naturally, no one had any objections. This way, their gains would be even greater. After the group recovered, they flew to two other places. One of them was the Gobi Plains, and the other was a basin in a huge mountain range. In fact, this basin used to be a mountain range. However, under the ravages of the storm, the mountain range had disappeared and turned into a basin, becoming a paradise for the void beasts. Zichen used an extremely short amount of time to clear these two places. Morris and the others obtained about 5 void beasts each. This was undoubtedly a huge gain. After that, they still did not have time to collect these materials. Instead, they began to gather the others according to Zichen's instructions. During this period, they found out why no one from the lower levels had come. It was not the destruction they had guessed, but the lack of flow. After that, there were few groups of void beasts. Zichen could only walk around and take a look. When he found some teams who had not received the message, he told them to leave quickly. No one would refuse the temptation of leaving, and the price they had to pay was negligible. This was because they still had to fight for survival even though they lived in such a broken place. In addition, Zichen not only gave them a better place to live, but also gave them hope. That hope was their families. Very few people in the world would be willing to be a wanderer forever. Many people had a stable heart, especially these 9th-grade martial artists who had reached the end of the world. Being able to settle down, have a family, and establish a clan was what they hoped for the most. It was still the same camp when Zichen arrived. At this moment, the scale of the camp had expanded greatly. Many protas had gathered here. Many taverns and other shops had opened here. However, the most popular businesses were still the taverns. Finally, they could leave this place where even ghosts could not be seen. Naturally, they wanted to indulge themselves. However, it was somewhat strange that almost all the tavern owners no longer wanted the void beast crystals that were used as a common currency. Instead, they wanted all kinds of materials, such as the most common void beast's blood. This blood was one of the main ingredients for brewing wine in this area. During this period, some people vaguely guessed something, so they gathered many teams and went out to hunt void beasts. They wanted to take away some of the only specialties of this place before they left. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. During these 3 years, people kept coming here. 3 years was enough for the news to spread and for everyone to come. As for those who did not come, they could only blame it on their bad luck. Over the past 3 years, the camp had expanded again and again. However, no one had seen those mysterious lords. If Morris had not come to this place in the end and personally oversaw it, Jia So, who had first spread the news, would have been torn to shreds by the many experts. After 3 years, Zichen appeared. Behind him were nearly 100 lucky fellows. The reason why they were lucky was because they had caught the last bus. Morris walked forward while Jia So followed him. Although they were both at level 9, the gap between their fighting competence wasn't small. Morris was an existence that could resist the Son of God. "Master, all the people we can find are here," said Morris respectfully. Zichen nodded, his eyes raking through the area. "You know the condition for taking you away, right?" Everybody nodded. That condition wasn't really a condition. There are so many planets in this life star. You can choose any place you want to stay. However, you cannot disturb the natives. I'm the rules supervisor of this life star. If I want to, I can sense everything that happens on this life star. Thus, don't bully them. They're still weak now, but after many years, they will grow up to be existences like you. Don't doubt it. In this life star, we can learn the principles by ourselves. We don't need to awaken the soul altars. The group of experts bowed to him one more time. Chapter 3203. In his line of sight were the foreign tribes that Fina had brought with her. Compared to Zichen, her connection with the foreign tribes was through the soul. Therefore, all the foreign tribes that were still alive in this world had come to Fina. When the Protoss saw the foreign tribes gathered, their expressions changed. Both sides were mortal enemies on the second level. Although they were no longer against each other on this level and fought whenever they met, their relationship was definitely not eased. "From now on, we're allies," Zichen said. They won't attack you, and you can't take the initiative to make trouble. As soon as he finished speaking, the space distorted and a huge space passage appeared. Everyone, start entering the passage. As soon as Zichen finished speaking, the powerhouses who had been impatient for a long time immediately flew toward the passage in the air. After everyone had entered, Zichen put away the foreign tribes again. Let's go. Next, Patian continued to open the space. The three of them walked into the space and headed straight for the heavenly realm. 30 years had passed in the heavenly realm. He wondered if Monk and the others had broken through. In the heavenly realm's tree city, a space passage opened under the ancient tree that Jono had transformed into. Zichen and the other two walked out of the space passage. The city was still bustling with people. It could be seen that there had not been many changes in the past 30 years, and no danger had appeared. At this moment, Zichen's voice sounded in the world. All rank 8s can stay in the heavenly realm. If the rank 9s want to see how powerful the sword servants are, you can also come out and have a look. When the rank 8s heard this, they immediately walked toward the passage. The rank 9s smiled sheepishly. What a joke! No one was willing to risk their lives to see something. All rank 8s, pay attention. When you're about to break through to rank 9, report to the city center and then arrange for you to arrive at the Life Star as soon as possible. After Zichen finished speaking, many rank 8s arrived in Tree City, their bodies surging with powerful auras. However, they soon sensed that there were also many powerful rank 8s in this city. Naturally, there were people to receive these rank 8s. Then, Zichen returned to the Life Star. After arriving here, he released all the rank 9's Protoss. As for the rank 9s, Fina was in charge of them. He's back? In the City of Trees on the Life Star, Sumengyao looked at Zichen with a smile. Zichen smiled and said, Is everything going well? Yes, they're all in the process of development. While Zichen and Sumengyao were talking about what had happened in the past 30 years, the grade 9 experts were looking around. They soon discovered that the spirit trees in the periphery were all godly king-level existences. This shocked them quite a bit. Those who had some knowledge of life stars and some experts who had visited life stars were astounded when they saw this. First, tell them about the structure of this world. How they want to develop from here on out is entirely up to them. If you want to stay here, then leave them behind, Zichen said. Next, Sumengyao arranged the iron swords that had reached the 9th class and told them about the current situation of the world. After they found out that this region was filled with God King level ancient trees, they became even more astonished. Iron Sword, are those sword servants really that powerful? During this time, one of the grade 9 experts asked. Many of the grade 9 experts also looked at Iron Sword. Although they had some understanding of the sword servants before coming here, they had not seen them with their own eyes after all, so there were still some doubts in their hearts. Iron Sword snorted when he heard this. Those sword servants exist to kill us. Do you think they're strong or not? Iron Sword's gaze swept across the many grade 9 experts in the field, and he said coldly, There are so many of us. One sword servant can slaughter us all. You've seen them with your own eyes? Someone asked again. Iron Sword said proudly, Of course, because I'm the first rank 9 other than Sir to see a sword servant and not die. Back then, I also tried to see if a rank 9 sword servant would appear. Everyone was obviously energized, so Iron Sword recounted what had happened back then in full detail. When everyone heard that Iron Sword had attracted a sword servant as soon as he broke through, their expressions changed. After learning that Sir Zichen could actually kill a sword servant, they were even more shocked. Iron Sword said solemnly, Sir is a defiant, and also the only one in this world who can kill a sword servant. Apart from Sir, even Sir's equally powerful clone can't kill a sword servant. I vaguely heard that sword servants are immortal. In other words, no matter how powerful our combat strength is, it's impossible to kill a sword servant. Looking at everyone's sour expressions, Iron Sword said with a smile, But don't worry, as long as we don't go to the heavenly realm, the sword servants can't do anything to us. Moreover, this life star is not smaller than the heavenly realm at all. There are countless continents here. Even with everyone's strength, it will take many years to complete a full tour. Alright, we've arrived at the border city of Tree City. Next, we'll leave the forest. I'll take you to the continents outside to have a look. From now on, it's up to you where you want to go. In the periphery, there are some specially built trial grounds. There are creatures from alternate time and space inside, which can be used for those low-level cultivators to train. Zichen and Su Mengyao headed to the processing workshops. He placed all the void beast corpses he had obtained in these workshops. Among the rank 9s who came this time, many were natives of the Divine King's celestial realm. Some of them had already come to the workshop and met up with their clansmen. After seeing so many corpses of void behemoths, they were extremely shocked. Next, they needed to dissect these corpses, then sort out the various materials, and finally use these materials to forge weapons or defensive armor. During this period, there would be one or more people managing each step, ensuring that there would be no mistakes. There would also be no cases of embezzlement. As for the void crystals obtained, Zichen specifically instructed that they must be complete and not cut apart. Monk and the others had not broken through yet. Giving them these things would speed up their breakthrough. At the same time, Zichen also instructed those people that if Morris came here to collect his things, they were to give him the void beast resources stored in the warehouse without any additional approval. After dealing with the matters here, Zichen returned to the heavenly realm. He did not know if it was because he had broken through to rank 9, or if it was because the Life Star's rules were complete, but these days, his perception had been significantly enhanced. Vaguely, he had a bad feeling. He could not tell where this feeling came from, but it was like a dark cloud floating above his head. Chapter 3204. With Zichen's current power, he was definitely the strongest below the divine realm. He could sweep away everything and destroy everything he wanted to destroy. However, he still chose to cultivate in seclusion. This was to become stronger. In this aspect, besides using his doppelganger to master more powerful netherworld techniques, there was another way, which was to further control the power of yin and yang heaven-defying rule power. The time spent in seclusion was not long. Time flew quietly. Someone sent the void crystal over. The tyrant and the others started to refine it. They had grown up together with Zichen. Zichen had complete trust in them. One day, the tyrant and the others who were cultivating in seclusion in the city chose to come out and enter the Life Star. This meant that they also wanted to break through and reach the peak of this world. A few months later, the tyrant and the others broke through one after another. Then, they stayed in the Life Star and did not step into the divine realm. The development of Yongding City slowed down a little. Jolene ran from city to city. Every day, countless resources would be added to the Tree City's bill. In this area, Yongding City had become a symbol. In this chaotic situation, it was like a lighthouse in the dark night, attracting many divine clan members. Many forces also came to these cities to develop. As a result, the city became more and more lively, and the population increased. 10,000 years passed quickly. The 10 domains of the divine realm had become history. The divine realm had become a legendary existence. In these 10,000 years, many forces were destroyed and many more rose. There were not many old people who were still alive. Zichen's Tree City still had 3 cities. He had no intention to expand, which meant that he did not have the ambition to dominate this world. However, his Yongding City almost covered the entire 10th domain. However, this area was no longer called the 10th domain. Now, it had a new name, Yongding City. All the cities were called Yongding City. The only difference was the number. In these 10,000 years, Yongding City had never experienced any turmoil. Even if there was, it could be suppressed quickly. Jolena had reached rank 8. It was not that she couldn't break through, but she didn't want to. With her contribution to Tree City, she could exchange it for 10 chances to break through. Since the experts on Zichen's side had all reached level 9 and returned to the Life Star, Jolena had recruited many experts guarding Yongding City. The development of Yongding City was all thanks to Jolina. Zichen was just a figurehead and did not contribute at all. During these 10,000 years, Zichen had been guarding Tree City. The uneasiness in his heart had never been dispelled. However, for 10,000 years, there had been no danger. This made him wonder if it was because of the suppression of the rules. The war in the God world continued for another 10,000 years. During this time, many forces were destroyed. Even Heavenly God City, which used to be the 9th region, was besieged many times. Fortunately, the Heavenly God Legion was there, so no one was able to take the city. 10,000 years had passed, but Sacred King Zenith's team still hadn't been destroyed. Only 3 of the original great powers of the 10th domain remained. At this moment, these 3 level 9 Sacred Kings were discussing the upcoming war. One of the Sacred Kings said, "It has dragged on for too long. Let's start the final battle. At worst, we will lose and stop fighting. If we continue like this, there will be no end." Another Sacred King sighed and said, "Unfortunately, Tree City has great power, and we can't use it. Otherwise, not to mention destroying this small area, why can't we even unify the God world?" Sacred King Zenith smiled faintly and said, "Those people are malefactors. They are indeed strong. A single level 8 expert can turn the situation around. However, if we come into contact with them, it will bring about too much karma. The losses outweigh the gains." The first Sacred King sighed and said, "Isn't that so?" "Right, Sacred King Zenith. I wonder what the foreign races are discussing this time?" Sacred King Zenith said, "Who knows? They are always so mysterious. Fortunately, they have no problem fighting." Sacred King Zenith did not know that this time, it was not only the 3 foreign races that had returned, but also all the foreign races that had extended to the God world. These non-humankind representatives had already arrived at the core meeting hall of the non-humankind. In this hall, there were 24 people sitting. Behind these 24 people, there were many people standing. There were only 24 seats, representing the highest status in the foreign races. The other powers, regardless of their size, could only choose to submit. At the very front was an old man. He tapped the table lightly with his finger and said, "Everyone, this battle has gone on for quite some time. It is time to make a choice." The previous discussion disappeared, and the surroundings became quiet. The old man continued, "Then let me begin. 100 origin crystals." Radiance flashed in front of the old man as a pile of sparkling crystals appeared, each of them emitting a dazzling radiance. These were the purest origin crystals in the world, seemingly condensed from laws. If Zichen were here, he would discover that these crystals were even purer than the ones inside the Void Colossi. This was something that was only circulated among the foreign races, perhaps even among the upper echelons. 200 on behalf of Master Victor. A 9th-level alien sitting next to the old man said. 300, Lord Bellica. 500, Lord Ely. The 24 people in the hall began to raise the price continuously, as though they were auctioning something. The number of origin crystals on the seats at the front kept increasing. The rank 9 standing at the back were also incomparably nervous, perhaps even more so than the 24 people in the hall. The old man from before raised the price to 1,000 for the second time. Lord Victor, 1,500. Lord Bellica, 1,700. Lord Ely, 2,000. Lord Victor, 3,000 origin crystals. The rank 9 representative who had been speaking on behalf of Lord Victor produced more origin crystals with a flash of brilliance. There were a total of 3,000 origin crystals in front of him. 3,000 origin crystals, Sir Victor is quite generous. The elder from before smiled after seeing the crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? The other races standing behind Victor's faction were incomparably nervous at this moment. This scene was related to their future development. The others around them also fell silent, but there was a flicker in their eyes. It wasn't clear whether they were communicating with someone or contemplating the gains and losses. This silence lasted for a while. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.